Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Arlington Board of Selectmen for Monday, November 20th, 2017. We're meeting at approximately 7:15 p.m. in the Selectmen Chambers on the second floor of Arlington Town Hall on Massachusetts Avenue, Massachusetts. I'm Chair Joseph Curo. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Vice Chair Stephen Byrne, Selectmen Kevin Grilli, Diane Mahan, and Dan Dunn, and we are supported in our work greatly by the Town Manager, Adam Chapdelaine, Town Council, Doug Heim, and our Board Administrator, Marie Kropelka. Now, some of you who have been following along this year know that I have this habit where I like to start the meetings with some kind of inspirational words or whatnot. But I decided that in lieu of, in view of the fact that we're coming up on Thanksgiving, that this would be a group activity with the board members, myself, with the tradition that I think a lot of families have, where we recognize things that we are thankful for. And so I first wanted to say that I'm very thankful for all of the volunteers in this town who do so much to make us such a great place to live. Whether it's veteran service organizations, religious organizations, civic associations, PTOs, especially at this time of year, I know there's a turning towards those who are really greatly in need, and a lot of organizations are working toward that end. And this evening, we'll be appointing, hope, God willing, some more volunteers to fill some of our volunteer boards and commissions. I was just reminded of this, I rushed into, I'm kind of breathless right now because I rushed into the meeting from the annual event of the Arlington Education Foundation, where volunteers from throughout our school system are joining together to try to raise $200,000 over the next 3 years to better support mental health services within our schools. And we have so many countless examples in this town. So I'm very thankful for all the volunteers who keep us going. Mr. Grilli, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and for the pre-warning that we were going to do this, because I had asked for a little bit of time up front to explain this trophy that I have in front of me. So I'll start with, I want to say how grateful I am that a very good friend of mine, retired police officer Dave McKenna, had surgery recently, and he's home recovering and doing very well, and can't wait to see him again. Because of Dave and Kenny Simmons, God rest his soul, and Adam Chapdelaine, I'm now a member of Arlington Rotary, and I'm very thankful that I joined every meeting with them. I'm amazed at what they do. But one of the traditions of Arlington Rotary is they give out what's called the Screwball Award. And the idea is, if you get the Screwball Award, you agree to put it on your desk so people will ask you, what is that? And you have to say, oh, I got the Screwball Award. In this case, my good friend, Dr. George Parsons, gave it to me because I'm such a stickler for Robert's Rules of Order, especially against our president, Mr. Bill Hainer. So I'm also thankful that this Wednesday morning at the Rotary Club meeting, anybody interested in Rotary, we meet every Wednesday at 8 a.m. or breakfast at 7:30 at the Legion. And at that time, I will be awarding this to someone else who also has a public desk where it may be seen on cable. And that's all I'll say, but I'm also very thankful that I live here in the town of Arlington.
Just for clarification, I don't think any members of this board, besides you,
No members of this board.
I'm not
Our
a screwball.
town manager, however, has had the Screwball Award, I believe, at one point in time. Isn't that true, sir? Yeah. So anyhow, that's my stuff. Thank you.
Ms. Mahan.
What I'm thankful for, under a minute, because you all don't want to hear more than that. First, I'm truly thankful for my family, for my kids, Becky and Eugene, Johnny and Auntie, and my grandkids, John and Chris, who, for some crazy reason, want to spend every waking moment back at my house, which I think is fantastic, as well as being able to live with my parents. I'm thankful that I have both my parents, because a lot of people don't, and I get wisdom from them every day, and definitely a very good laugh, because they're very entertaining. I'm thankful for the Arlington community, for how understanding they are, and how civic-minded they are, and can rally around a cause. I'm thankful for Ashley, Mary, and Fran, and Marie for making us, the Board of Selectmen, look as good as we do and help us to strive what we want to do. I'm thankful for the 5 different pieces that are the Board of Selectmen that really create a great apple pie in terms of what this Board of Selectmen means to the town of Arlington. I've heard a lot more positives and very few negatives. And lastly, I'm extremely thankful and proud of our Arlington Pop Warner cheerleaders A squad who competed yesterday at Eastern Mass, who finished first and are Eastern Mass champions. And Eastern Mass is Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, et cetera. And we'll be, and thankful for, God bless you, coaches and parents that have to fundraise to get down there. And they'll be competing for nationals the first week in December in Disney. So a lot more to be thankful for. And thank you, Mr. Carroll, for coming up with this.
Thank you. Mr. Dunn?
So I got the note forwarded from Marie, and I said, oh, what am I going to think? And I said, and the phrasing was, thankful in the last year. And so I thought about where we were a year ago, and I am thankful for our forward progress and our resiliency. I think about a year ago, we were just past an election that many of us were unhappy with the results, and we were deeply concerned about the future. And I think we were right to worry about it, but at the same time, we have persevered. And so I want to be thankful for the fact that we put together the Trust Act and we got it through town meeting, that we did the municipal power aggregation and other steps to help support our climate that the national government is not working on. The work that we've done on our education, in particular our infrastructure and in building schools, and in the town infrastructure, even the organizational things like our progress towards the municipal finance department. And so I think about what the last year is, and I'm very thankful of all that progress. And who do you thank? I think there's going to be some common themes here. The residents, the residents are what make this, it makes everything happen, makes all of us here. The volunteers, and that goes from town meeting members to committee appointees to people who show up and help clean up Spy Pond. It doesn't matter what your volunteer is, you're volunteering. And last but certainly not least is our town employees. We owe them a lot to keep. We can't volunteer. We couldn't do this alone. We couldn't do it as residents. We couldn't do it as volunteers. We need the professional staff, and we need the work that we get every day from public safety through education through all of our support departments. So I'm thankful for the progress and resiliency of the last year.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. Mr. Byrne?
Well, that's a tough one to follow up. And I think, I agree with a lot of what all of my colleagues have said and what I'm thankful for over the past year. The past year was an important one for me. I got married in August, and I am very thankful to be spending my first Thanksgiving with my beautiful wife, Jacqueline, and my family and her family, which is now mine, and I'm very grateful for that. And I think about my extended family, and that's we're kind of all have roots in Arlington, and that traces back to the town staff in many ways, and where I remember as a young child going and spending a lot of time with Marie down on 51 Grove Street, and really getting to know a lot of special people through my life here in the community. So I'm very grateful for that, and I'm thankful to be a part of this board, and I'm thankful to all my colleagues.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all of my colleagues for that, and I know that we all join together in wishing all of the residents a happy Thanksgiving as we move forward, and may we all count our blessings. So now we move into the meat of the agenda. First on the agenda is for approval, Norway maple removal at 264 Renfrew Street. It's a petition by Elisa and Bob McDonald. Mr. and Ms. McDonald here? Would you like to come up to the mic and introduce yourselves, name and address, and just tell us about your petition?
Is it okay if I lower this a little
Yeah,
bit?
it's absolutely fine.
Okay. So my name is Lisa McDonald. I live at 264 Renfrew Street in Arlington. This is my first time at a meeting like this, a little bit intimidating, so should I just answer your questions, or?
We promise not to bite.
Yeah. Well, maybe you could, I think we have the materials in front of us. Our understanding is that you have a driveway where there is a tree at the end of the driveway, a street tree, which over time has infringed on the driveway and rendered it, access difficult for the driveway, and that you're petitioning for some relief from that. I don't know if you want to expand on that at all?
Sure.
And just actually, before you do that, I want to, we did this the last time we had a tree hearing. I want to make sure that I explain the process by which a tree hearing is undertaken. What happens is when a resident requests, and I know you know this, but when a resident requests that a street tree be removed for any reason, they make that appeal to the town tree warden. It is noticed, and then a hearing is held. I know our tree warden, Mr. LaQuiver, is here somewhere, I think, to help us out. Tim LaQuiver. And the tree warden will conduct a hearing after it's noticed, but if there's any objection that is registered by anyone at the hearing, it is, the request is necessarily turned down, and the petitioner has the option to come before the Board of Selectmen to request that we grant or possibly deny the petition. Mr. LaQuiver, am I stating that correctly? Thank you. I'm sorry. If you could go forward, yeah.
So we've lived in Arlington for quite a while now. We moved in before we had kids, and then we had twins. And so we purchased a minivan, we call it. They don't even make it anymore because it's so mini, nobody wants it. And it has sliding doors, and so we've managed to have that down our driveway. But our children are now 8 and a half. And so we are having quite a lot of you can't open a regular car door. You can get the driver's door open if you don't pull all the way in, and you have to bang it against the retaining wall that's there, and the tree is right there, so you can't go out that way either. No one else can get out on any side. And the house, if you're facing our house, the house to our right has exactly the same driveway issue. And what they've done for years now is to the left of that driveway, they have a landing, a grassy area within the parameters. I called, with Tim's advice, I called the Board of Engineers, Town of Engineers, and the building department to also speak to them and find out the dimensions. I called Jeff Oliver Enterprises, who was approved on the list of people who can tree remove. He came out and said we were within the 20-plus feet that you need in order to do exactly what our neighbors have done. And our biggest challenge is that the tree is there, but also Verizon has put a pole on the opposite side of this landing. So even if we were to somehow keep the tree, we couldn't access that landing because the Verizon pole is there. So you couldn't even fit a car in between the tree and the pole. And we've talked to Verizon, you can't really talk to anybody, at least I haven't been able to get anybody to remove that pole. So we're just sort of stuck, and now that the snow is coming, the second you have any type of snow buildup in those narrow driveways, you cannot even get out. So we can barely open the driveway door now. I don't even know what we're going to do once the snow comes.
Okay, thank you. Before I turn to questions, ACMi, if you're listening, there is an echo up here for the speakers at the mic, just so you're aware. Any of my colleagues have questions? Ms. Mahan?
I would just ask you, and you don't have to say yes, no, you can say, I don't know, I'm not sure, but one of the things that the tree warden has provided us with, that since this is a healthy tree, if the board did decide to allow it to be taken down, that it would be a fee involved of $50 per inch, which could come out to approximately $800, give or take, no more than that. If you're comfortable answering that, is that something that you're A, aware of, and B, willing to commit to?
Yeah, Tim came out and he measured it. I think it came out to 16 inches in diameter or something, and he explained the whole process to me. And I mean, I kind of feel like if that's the rule, then that's the rule. We just we've even looked into moving, because we just don't know what we're going to do. So we'll just follow whatever the rule is.
Okay, and then after any colleagues for my question, I don't know if Tim has any.
Okay. Any other questions, board members? No? Okay. Mr. LaQueve, did you have anything you wish to add to the? No, I think. If you could come to the mic, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Good evening. I'm Tim LaQueve. I'm the Arlington Town Tree Warden. So again, Ms. McDonald, she did reach out to me to see what we could do about this driveway situation. So again, it's an Norway maple. Norway maples are on the invasive species list, but even since January 1st, 2009, even in it's a Norway maple, so they're no longer allowed to be propagated, planted, or grown in the Commonwealth. This being said, they're still protected under Massachusetts general laws under Chapter 87, and one of the many responsibilities of a tree warden is to govern public shade trees. And I take that responsibility extremely serious. So when I looked at this tree, it is a Norway maple, invasive species, and it is healthy, so therefore I could not grant permission for removal. That's why we had the tree hearing. Ms. McDonald showed at the tree hearing, nobody else showed, but I did receive several letters objecting for the removal of the tree. So looking at this case, it would have been nice if anybody objecting would come to the hearing. That way we could have a discussion, we could talk about it. Because there was nobody actually showing to the hearing, there was no opportunity for a discussion. So therefore, here we are. So my feeling is that even though I feel it's my responsibility to govern these trees, this particular circumstance, there's no way for her family that's growing to have the opportunity to open up the car doors. So in this particular case, I look at each tree and each situation very different. And because this tree is just in the way of expanding the driveway, if the board would grant permission, I would back that and support that decision for removal, just because there's no other opportunity. She can't park out in the street, so here we are. So this is why we have a hearing.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the warden? Okay. I think you raised actually an important point. I mean, all of these situations we hear are different, and we see situations like this where there's infringement on the property by the tree. We see even more serious situations where there's not only an infringement, but actually present or imminent danger to life or property on the from the street tree. We have situations where it's just a matter of preference that are brought to us for consideration, and we also have situations like a recent situation we dealt with where there was an existing street tree and there was apparent design and construction that did not take that into account at all. So I'm actually just saying this generally, that when this board kind of evaluates these things, we take all of these criteria into consideration, and not every, as you say, not every situation is the same. Just two more points before I ask for a motion. I want to note that there were two, in our packets, there were two objections that were raised. One was from Arlington residents who I believe live in another area of town, but did have a concern about this tree. The other was submitted anonymously and claimed to be a Renfrew resident. And I just want to say that, and just ask folks that if you are engaging in public processes like this, I, for one, don't put a lot of stock in anonymous complaints that are issued by folks. If you have a legitimate concern, I would ask that people please sign what you're and stand behind your objections, so that we can follow up, and it's a decent thing to do. The only other thing I would say is that I did drive past the property, and I observed the same thing, that the root ball is infringing on this driveway right now, presently. And those are the piece of information I put out for consideration.
At what point are you, I'm assuming you're going to open up for other speakers from
Yes.
for the hearing? I don't know when you.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak on this matter? The Renfrew? 264 Renfrew. Okay,
Thank you.
there is no one else. Thank you for reminding me, though. Mr. Byrne?
Just to follow up on that, and Joe's previous comments about engagement, I think, that, you know, this is a good example, as Tim mentioned, where, you know, perhaps a dialogue could go a long way in trying to, you know, have a discussion and see where people are coming from. So I would urge any opponents to these cases to show up and have that discussion. I know sometimes they're hard to have, and, you know, you don't, you know, it might be uncomfortable at times, but I think it is important to have that level of engagement. And, you know, maybe a solution that works for all can be reached. That being said, Tim, I really appreciate, you know, your commitment to this, and I know it's not an easy job, but I am happy to move approval to support the request to remove the tree.
We have a motion by Mr. Byrne. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Mahan. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Mr. Greeley?
I think Dan's been waiting.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Mr. Bailey. I was itching to make sure we got all the voices. I didn't need, but I'll be short. I think context in these requests matters, and a request that's coming from a neighbor who's a part of, like, someone who is a part of the neighborhood and has been there for years. That means a lot to me, as opposed to somebody who is, you know, frankly, a contractor who's only going to be there for a couple months. And so I'm happy to support the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Greeley?
So, I'm not recommending this, but I'm curious, would we ever consider allowing a parking space in front of a property instead of removal of a tree? And I have no idea whether this would work. I didn't go yet. I'm wondering what the homeowner thinks. If we granted you a parking space, I'm not saying we should do this, please, but this is new for us doing tree hearings, and I think it's an interesting, we don't lightly give parking spaces on streets in Arlington. But in terms of your case, I'm just curious, would that?
I mean, we do not want to get rid of that tree. Before, you know, we had kids or stuff, I remember they mark trees that they're going to cut down in the town with orange, and I saw them marking trees, and I literally stood outside my house, because I was like, they better not put a mark on my tree, because I love the tree. But then you realize, like, everything's growing, the roots are growing, like you said, and now we're at a place. So to answer your question, it would be great. That would definitely solve it, except during snow emergencies, because then what do we do with our car? But yeah, I would be totally amenable to that if there was an answer to the snow emergency. Yeah, that would be no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great outside-the-box thinking.
Okay, is there any?
And for confusing things. See why I got the screwball?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and seconded. Is there any further discussion on it? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Now,
Nobody better.
we now move to another request for a Norway maple removal of 37 Beverly Road, Rich and Kate Sands. Hi.
Hello. Thanks very much. I'm Rich Sands. This is my wife, Kate. We've been Arlington residents for, since the 1980s. And we are very happy to be in a town with such great natural beauty, and we are tree advocates. We're right on the lower Mystic Lake. We get a lot of benefit from the beauty and the natural environment here. That having been said, the tree that we're talking about is 23-inch Norway maple. It's diseased. It has an anthracnose fungal infection that's caused other pests to infiltrate the tree, and it's only got one large live branch, and then the other branches have either broken off or been pruned off by the utility company. So we're requesting that this tree be removed because it's diseased and unhealthy. It's an undesirable species. It's a Norway maple, and it's very unsightly at this point. It's been pruned. Really, it looks pretty ragged, and it's unsafe also. Before this last windstorm that we had a few weeks ago, there was a big rain, and the rain soaked into a dead branch that was on the tree, and it dropped right on the sidewalk, a fairly large branch, which then the town had to come by and remove. So we're a little concerned about the safety of this tree as well. So that big branch that's overhanging our property, we don't know what the condition of the trunk is and how well it's going to hold up. And then finally, there's an accessibility issue. With this tree, with the Norway maples, they tend to pop the sidewalk and make these big ripples. And they did recently repave our sidewalk, but it's already starting to show signs of the roots damaging the sidewalk. And, if you were in a wheelchair or a scooter, it would be tough to get by.
And if you're someone who sometimes doesn't watch where they're walking, I've even tripped over it, and I've lived there for 25 years, so it gets worse and we've done it several times to clean it up, to make it smooth, and this doesn't take long.
So why is this proposal good for the town? So we feel it's good because really as you described, the process is not only do we pay for all of the work, but we also contribute to the Trees Please Fund so that the town can then plant additional trees to add to the tree population and to change the tree population from these overgrown old Norway maples into a more desirable set of trees. So we would propose planting a fairly large caliper replacement tree there, something really attractive, but something that wouldn't interfere with the overhead wires the way the Norway maples do. And we're also keen, if we do get your approval to do this, to do some additional work, perhaps install a curb, fix the sidewalk where we've had the issues, and we would pay for that stuff as well. Build up the verge so that it's level and isn't eroding into the street. That sort of thing. So with a 23-inch tree, and let's say we planted a 3-inch caliper replacement, that'd be $1,000 to the Trees Please Fund. If we don't do this now, in the next few years, because of the condition of this tree, it will end up having to be removed at the town's expense. And the replacement tree is likely to be, the 1-inch caliper, bare root kind of tree that usually goes in. So we're proposing planting something much more substantial than that.
We also was a little concerned at the end of our street, there was a tree even bigger than ours and a branch that came down and tore down.
Another Norway maple.
Yeah, and tore down their power lines. So it makes me just question, I'm not a expert or anything, is if maybe some of the trees in that area are, also not in good shape.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any of my colleagues have any questions for the Sands? Ms. Mahan?
Just as guidance in terms of, I wouldn't be prepared to make a motion right now. If I did, it would be not to allow this. If you come to my house, 23 Howard Street, and I went by yours, I have the exact same tree. I have 3 disabled family members in my house, 2 are severely disabled. I had the same thing the last storm, and I've called the town to say, this tree is dead, because there's only, there's some leaves on it, but there's branches that, don't get any leaves, and it's got all the green on the outside of the tree, and every big storm that comes through, clunks come down, and, we get little dents in the car, but the tree's not dead, and it is protected, and I haven't pushed it any further than that. So I have the exact same situation you have. We had brand-new sidewalks done in front of my house on Howard Street And the same thing happened, different than what happened to you all, one of the neighborhood kids, when they did the sidewalks, put their initials in it, so I also have initials in the new sidewalks. But I have the buckling that come up, and I have one of my parents that's just about blind, retinitis pigmentosa, as well as a child that's severely disabled. But the tree still remains because it's still viable, it's still protected, it's still there. My only concern would be, and I guess I would look to my colleagues, because I'm in the unusual situation, because I've been in the same place, that I have the exact same tree. I went by your house, I have the same thing. Yours is a little more flourishing than mine is, but it is a Norway maple, I think it is, and it is still, it does buckle the sidewalk, and it is still protected. But I've accepted the fact that, you know, it's not dead, it needs to be there. And if I was thinking myself personally, if I got it, taking the selectmen stuff out of it, what would that mean for the rest of town of Arlington? Because I've gone through the town, and I've looked at, because I'm like, what other trees have this green, and not all the branches have leaves on them? They're in the hundreds, there's quite a few. So, I just want to say I feel your pain, because same thing happened to me. You got new sidewalks, they're already buckled, you know, you don't have the initials. I have 3 disabled family members who live in the house, but I've sort of accepted you know, besides my quality of life, everything's okay. You know, I have a driveway that goes like this, and in the wintertime, it's an ice pit, but that has nothing to do with the tree being there. I can still get in and out. There's no utility activity there. So right now, I would just be inclined to sort of take the same medicine that I'm taking, which would be to deny this request, but I'd like to hear, I just wanted to relay that to my colleagues on the board, but I'm just thinking of what this means. We had the previous tree hearing, and it was a personal situation, as well as Verizon came in and put in a poll that also added to everything that was going on. And this is, and I'm saying the same thing. I'm concerned about, you know, oh, what if somebody walks under there and a branch comes down, and it hasn't happened in 20 years, but they do come down. I've had probably a diameter of this in that last storm that came down, but when I stepped on them, they completely disintegrated, because it was the part of the tree branch that was already dead, so.
Well, it does have disease.
Oh, mine does too. I'm just saying, you know,
Yeah.
but I'd like to hear from my
And
colleagues.
we have a
'cause I'm
Norway
kinda-
maple that's 32 feet down from it. So it's not like there aren't any big trees.
Okay, thank you. I think, well, I'm going to ask my colleagues if they
Sorry.
have anything, that's okay. If they have anything to say or ask, and then we're going to hear from the tree warden and anybody else who's here on the issue.
Yeah, I certainly want to hear from the tree warden, and we'll be heavily guided by him. But I am curious, how do you know it's diseased? Do you have an expertise? I'm not trying to be fresh, I'm just, how do you
So-
know it's diseased?
So we asked our licensed arborist that takes care of the trees on our property what its condition was, and he told us what the situation was.
That it has?
He works for Save a Tree.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anything else from my colleagues? Mr. LaQuieve, would you like to add some context? Yeah.
Sure. So, again, it is a Norway maple. It is on the invasive species list, but again, it is protected under Chapter 87. They're correct, it does have a fungal disease, which is called anthracnose, but most of all the Norway maples in the Northeast have anthracnose due to our wet weather. Early spring, we've had tremendous amount of rainfall, between 1 to 2 inches. So what happens is that the epidermis of the leaf stays wet. Fungal spores develop on these leaves. Every time it rains, those fungal spores get splashed to the next leaf. The epidermis is covered with a fungus. The tree decides to shed those leaves. If you look at any leaf on the ground, you'll notice 2 spots. One is tar spot. It's a big black lesion about the size of your thumb pad. That does not hurt the tree, just looks unsightly. The more pressing issue is the anthracnose. And so every tree in the Northeast, Norway maples are infected. I can't put every Norway maple on the removal list. My feeling is that most of these trees will leaf out next year. And that when I look at a tree and decide if it can come down or not, I always look at it if it can be pruned. If the main stem is intact, if there aren't any large cavities, fruiting structures that would tell me that there's decay in it, then I add those trees to the pruning list. There are some dead branches in the canopy. My feeling is that once it's placed on the pruning list, that deadwood could be removed and the tree will be healthy. The tree doesn't have to use energy to shed those branches. Once the deadwood is removed from the canopy, the tree can actually use its own energy reserve to push out new leaves and new branches. So therefore, that's why I placed it on the pruning list. So we'll have to see how the tree fares next season. And this goes for all of our Norway maples in the Northeast. So my feeling is that the tree will be able to at least be around for several years to come.
Could I ask about approximately how long is our pruning list right now?
Right now, our pruning list, our backlog is approximately about 2 to 3 months or so. We do have a backlog, which is quite extensive, but we do have an outside contractor helping us with that backlog. So my feeling is within the next several months, we'll be on top of it, and we'll be a little bit more proactive than reactive.
And this has been placed on the list?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to disclose my tree is also on the list. I'm not just saying, my husband's wanted that down for 10 years, but they come out and prune it every 2-3 years, and it's on the list, so I don't know if that matters, Doug.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have anything for the tree warden? Mr. Byrne?
I have a question. Not so much just in terms of this tree on 37 Beverly Road, but you spoke a bit about being, more proactive versus reactive. Is there a, comprehensive strategy to look into, these types of trees throughout the community and try to?
Absolutely.
address them?
So we've just finished the summer with a tree inventory in town. We cataloged over 10,500 trees. So we are working on a tree plan now that will, instead of residents who request either pruning or removals into our QA system, we're hoping to have a proactive approach where we can strategically prune each tree in town through a pruning cycle. So this way it'll give us an opportunity, now that we know what we have in town, we know the species, we know how big they are, and we know the condition that they are. So instead of just kind of somebody calling, looking at it, now we know what we have. So once we get on top of our backlog, we'll have an opportunity as we move forward to have a more of a proactive approach in a traditional pruning style, systematically pruning each tree through town.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sounds helpful.
Okay, is there anybody else here who wish to speak to this agenda item? Okay. Seeing none, do any of my colleagues have? Yeah.
I have a
Mr.
follow-up
Dunn.
question for the Sands, if I may.
Okay,
Yeah,
certainly.
So if you replace say we grant this, we take the tree down, are you going to replace in a similar location on your property?
Yes, we would propose pretty much, we'd remove this tree, grind the stump, and then plant the replacement tree pretty much in the same location. It's evenly spaced between the other street trees, so that's the logical place. There's no reason to put it somewhere else.
Thank you.
Ms. Mahan?
Just to follow up to, if I could, to the tree warden, Mr. Leclerc, to Mr. Dunn's question. Just going through the process, I understand it would be the proponent's intention to say the tree would go there, but am I correct? It's not necessarily their call. They put the money into the Trees Please Fund, then that tree committee decides where it should go, and probably more often than not, it would not be in front of their residents.
Perhaps we could do a little bit of both. We may not be able to put it exactly where that tree is, because even though you grind the stump, there could be some more woody material, some more heavy mass underneath the grade. You still need to be able to dig a proper size hole to either adequately put either a bare root tree or a large size ball burlap plant. So it all depends on, after you excavate and after you grind the stump down, what does it look like? And then also have to evaluate the site, also taking into the sidewalk and the overhead utilities. So it's just not a matter of, oh, there's a tree there, we can automatically put a tree back in its spot. There's a little bit more to that. Perhaps we could put something back close, but we would have to take a closer look at that.
Right. And just my other 2-3 concerns, just because I have personal experience with this. If we grant this tonight, I'm going to guarantee you, starting with my husband, we're going to have at least 100 to 200 similar requests. I'm also concerned about the process. There was another Norway maple further down the street on the side that I live that was completely dead. no leaves coming out. That was pruned by the town through subcontractors, Marquis. I want to say it's like, I'm 23 Howard, so it's like 11 Howard. And that stump has been there for at least 6 months because the neighbors called me and I was told, because we can't do everything on the spot, that stump won't be removed to the spring, perhaps fall of next year. So there will be no tree going there. So that's another thing in terms of, I mean, it's great to say, oh, remove the tree, the stump, because, you know, it's, the diameter is probably similar to the tree that's in front of your house. It's, if it doesn't get done, it's gonna be done for a year. The Trees Please Committee will, when they get the funds, do it before even the tree down the street. Sorry, that's distracting.
I apologize.
I'm sorry, I'm just like, I lost my train of thought. So what I'm trying to say to my colleagues is, and I'm in this situation, and I'm probably gonna get it when I get home tonight, you know, because, and you all have been by my house, and the next time you buy there, look at the tree in front of my house, which is in more, is more diseased than the tree in front of this individual, your house, because I've been there, and you can come by my house at 23 Howard. I'm just thinking of, you know, future boards, what we're opening up here, in terms of, because if you look at a lot of these Norway maples in Arlington, because I have gone by, as I've gone to different people's houses, because I was kind of ticked off. I'm like, hey, I'm in the town, I'm a selectman, you know, they denied my request, so I started looking at, you know, other streets, including other tree hearings that we've had. There's many, many in the hundreds of trees, well, I'll say at least 50 to 100 that I could go through in different neighborhoods that are in the same situation. Myself personally, I would like to make my husband happy. If this goes through tonight, will be one of those requests, and if we follow the same guidelines, that tree should come down. But in terms of guaranteeing that it's not for anyone who says, I'm gonna pay the money to Trees Please fee, and I'll put the tree back in front of my house, that's, you know, probably maybe gonna happen 20-25% of the time, but it's not up to the individual. And I know my husband would say, I'll do the same thing, I'll pay the $50 per square inch diameter. But it's highly unlikely that a tree will go in front of my house because of the stump removal. Because what's been happening, because we have a new tree warden, and no disparaging remarks to previous tree wardens, but he's been very diligent in terms of pruning and taking these requests and getting out there. But there's quite a few residences, including on my street, because I've been contacted, I'm sure you all have, not from Howard Street, but other streets, that there are stumps out there that need to wait. So there won't be, more times than not, a tree placed back there in front of there. So my thing would be to, I would like to let the tree warden, perhaps on this particular request, at least let a year go through in terms of pruning and the plans that he's set in place to see, you know, where this tree goes and where it matures. I don't want to have an onslaught of people coming in who have similar circumstances, because it's out there in just about every single neighborhood. But I would look to my colleagues, because I'm kind of torn, because I want to be where these two individuals are standing, because my husband has wanted this for so long, but I also respect the fact that Arlington is Tree City, one of the Tree City USA. We do have a new tree warden. He does have a pruning and observation program in place, as well as, I'm going to tell you, those stumps, you're lucky if they get out and it's nobody's fault 12 to 15 months after the actual big tree is taken down. So I'm going to leave it to one of my colleagues to make a motion, so.
Make a motion, okay. Anyone ready to make a motion? Mr. Dunn?
I will move approval of the removal of the tree with condition attached that, obviously the payment of the, you know, as required, but the additional agreement that in working with the tree warden and the tree committee, that it be replaced. And I'm going to say, so that's my, replaced in a you know, similar, but I don't know exactly how to say language I'm after. It doesn't have to be an identical place. Doesn't have to be, but it has to be like a smart place that they can come to an agreement on. And that hopefully someone can smooth my language a little bit on that. So a couple thoughts on why I'm making that motion and why I'm taking that position. Again, context matters. And when you have somebody who's lived in town and on that particular property for, decades at this point, I respect their choices, that they're making good choices for their neighborhood and for their home. They're not, they're not acting capriciously. They're part of the fabric of the town, and they're making these decisions. I think of another point is, I think of our tree protection statutes or rules as things that I don't want to happen are developers coming through and removing all the trees on a piece of property, clear cutting it so that it's for easier development or because they think they can sell it better. I don't think that we should be using, and I don't think that it's good to, when the rule is prohibiting what I would call, routine maintenance of your own property. And so I think that we've got this bylaw here this law is here to protect capricious action, but we're the board that gets to decide whether, where the cases are, and this one feels right. And I think that, I agree with Mrs. Mahan that there's a chance that this could unleash a horde of requests. I don't think it will, and if it does, then I'll fess up in the future and I'll say, I voted for this in the past, but I'm not going to vote for this one because I think we went too far, and I think that I will admit that I was wrong should we get there. So for all the, and I understand also, and finally, I'm closing up, that the tree that we're replacing with is not going to be the same as the tree that's going to be there. It's going to take years for that tree to grow to be anything near in the canopy. But renewal is part of the tree, like they come down, they go up, and I'm okay with this one coming down and a new one going up.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Dunn to approve with conditions of coordination with the tree warden and the tree committee.
On an appropriate
On
replacement.
appropriate replacement. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, there's a second for discussion. Ms. Mahan?
Two other things. The second Pandora's box we're opening is NSTAR, when they got I don't want to say inordinate, an appropriate amount of complaints in terms of power outages, and they began an ambitious tree pruning and tree removal program. This board, and I think most of my colleagues, I'm not sure about Mr. Burns, so I don't want to, but it might also include them, admonished them and told them, you need to stop, we need to save these trees. So I will tell you that the utilities will be in here back on that aggressive plan, and I don't know how we say no to them if this motion should go through. And second of all, just case in point, when we had that microburst come through, in 2012, from the town manager and others, we got, 6 figures recouped from the state. If you go down Gray Street, that was one of the funnel areas that the microburst hit inordinately more than the rest of the town. And all those trees were taken out, which had nothing to do with neighbors' requests, but it was asked, it was the storm, microburst that took them out. And I think of the 16 or 20 trees that were taken out, if anyone wants to correct me, please do. I know when I go down, only 2 survived. And a large factor because of that, and I'm not saying it's because that this would happen in this case, but the 2 that did survive, those neighbors went out, we did the green bags that, helped to keep them irrigated, and we asked the neighbors to please go out there and water the trees. And if you don't do that diligently, only 2 survived, and it was 2 neighbors that, of the 20 on that. If you go down Gray Street between the signal at Highland and Gray and Endicott and Gray, and if you look mostly as you're coming down Gray towards Lexington, most of them are on the right-hand side. There's like 18 on the right, 2 on the left. Of those 20, we did plant replacement trees, which would be planted here, but only 2 survived because those neighbors, were diligent enough to, well, this is just me saying that, because I spoke to the other neighbors, and they were like, well, they never wanted the tree anyway, so they weren't out here watering. I don't know if that was the case or not, as well as maybe the trees that were planted, there were only 2 spots that those replacement kind of trees could serve. So my thing would be, we're gonna have to talk to the utilities that we said, no, you can't prune and you can't take trees down, even though your residents are complaining about power outages, as well as, just to say we're gonna plant a tree in front doesn't mean it's gonna take root, so. I'm, right now, from my position, besides my husband, taking my husband out of the equation, I'm inclined not to support it.
We won't tell him.
No, he's watching, I'm in
Mr.
trouble,
Gurley.
he's watching.
I very much agree with a lot of what Dan said, and I think it was an excellent presentation by Mr. and Mrs. Sands. But I was going to make the motion that we deny it at this point in time, and if possible, we ask our tree warden to report back to us in what period of time, 6 months, a year? You mentioned about after the pruning, what you would be able to tell better about the shape.
Yeah, absolutely. After the pruning it would be finished, take a look next season to see after the leaves push out, end of May, April, see how the tree looks. We could reevaluate it. But my feeling is that the tree can be pruned, so therefore, that's why I put it on the on the pruning list. And when we did conduct our tree inventory this year, that tree was designated with a fair condition. Poor, meaning perhaps pruning, maybe removal. Fair, which a majority of our trees are in town. Dead wood in the canopy, stubs, broken branches, those trees could be pruned. And then a good condition, which is basically perfect. Maybe the last meeting that we had with the web coat situation, that would be a good condition, that ash tree. So majority of our trees are in fair condition. Again, that's why it was placed on the pruning list.
So may I suggest that we take a vote on Mr. Dunn's motion, then if we have any further requests for follow-up for the tree warden through the town manager, of course, that we take a motion on that? Would that make sense?
All I said was I was going to. I didn't-
Absolutely. I know. No, I know, but I think it's a great idea.
No, that-
I'm going to encourage you to offer that motion, Mr.
However you want to do it,
You
Mr.
wish to,
Chairman.
if you wish to, yeah. Okay, so we have a motion on the table by Mr. Dunn, second by Mr. Byrne for discussion to approve with conditions. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Gurley?
Did you wish to make another motion?
So could I ask another question of our excellent tree warden? Is this one, it's due for pruning or has been pruned?
It has not been pruned.
Can we move it up on a list or something?
Yeah, this is something that we could maybe put as a high priority on the pruning list.
But
So-
not till the spring.
Well, we
I
could
don't know,
prune it,
whenever
we
they
could,
do it.
we could prune it sooner than later, and then reevaluate it in the springtime to see
That's
how
my
it looks.
motion.
Second.
That we deny this request at this time, we support the decision of the tree warden, and ask that we give priority to this tree in terms of pruning, and we revisit this in May. Is that all okay?
Yes.
Second.
And, sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Sands, I'm sure it's not completely okay with you, but.
If it's okay, could I just have just 30 seconds to
One more.
a quick comment?
Yeah, certainly.
So I just want to thank you guys for listening to our request. We really appreciate the opportunity to make this request. I just want to suggest there's a different way of looking at this. I just throw this out for thought. Trees are a population. They grow, they age, they die. And it's up to the town and the tree warden, and it's up to the Department of Public Works to maintain that population. The Norway maples we have in town were planted at a time when people didn't realize what they were planting, how they were planting it, et cetera. And yeah, you're right. There are, the tree probably isn't going to fall over tomorrow. But the way that the statute is written and the way that Mr. LaQuive explained it to us, we are required not only to pay for all of this work, but we're also required to contribute to the betterment of the trees in town. And so if we don't cut the tree down with our money, it's going to be the town's budget that's going to cut the tree down, and there won't be this contribution to the Trees Please Fund, and it's not going to have this future impact on the tree population in town. So when people come to you and ask, you know, this tree, all right, yes, it's not going to fall down tomorrow, it's not an imminent danger, but we're offering to essentially contribute our own money to the betterment of the town. In, you know, obviously it helps us with our property, but it also helps the town. It's just another way of looking at the situation. It's not just protect the trees at all costs. It's think about the long-term population of the trees and how the town can best, you know, build that tree city designation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Byrne?
Find me 10 neighbors that want trees in front of the house.
You okay? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Byrne, by Mr.
Greeley.
Greeley, second by Ms. Mahan. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, great. So, we're sorry, we've denied the request right now. We are gonna bump it up on the pruning list and then revisit and get an update on the health. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard effort.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
We now move to presentation, Arlington Center Safe Travel Project, adjustments and improvements. Mr. Rademacher, our Director of Public Works.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I will attempt to be as expedient as possible. I'm sure you have a lot ahead on your agenda. But this
Bless
is
you.
this is an important project, and I'll take as many questions as you all may have or people in the audience might have. But as you all know, maybe 6 or so months ago, we finished some improvements to the center of town. We received funding from the state to design improvements that were intended to alleviate congestion, but also improve the experience for people on the bike path and pedestrians. Since the completion of that project, we've received feedback from users of that area, both motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, and town employees and officials have also gave us some feedback on how that area operates. We've received numerous comments and like I say, as well, made some observations of our own. So over that period, we've come up with some recommendations on improving what is out there today. There's, I'll kind of break them up, both the intersection at Mass, Pleasant, and Mystic, and then Swan Place. So at Mass, Mystic, and Pleasant, the confusion there, the overriding confusion was for cyclists. How do they get from Uncle Sam Park to Swan Place? There wasn't, the markings maybe weren't appropriate or clear, and signalization wasn't clear. Should cyclists go on a pedestrian phase, on a vehicle phase, whatnot? So we're proposing to make improvements at that location by adding some bicycle signals. So in the corner of the church, so that people from Uncle Sam will know that that is the, cyclists will know that's the direction to go, and then another bicycle signal by the Cambridge Savings Bank, so that once you're in that bike box, you'll have another indication to let you know that you want to head east during that phase. Those bicycle signals are going to be run concurrent with the vehicle lights, so they would come on automatically. There'd be no need to be detected or push a button for cyclists. We also intend to make some improvements when the weather gets better to add more paint markings to the surface to better direct folks in one way or the other that the design was intended for at that location. At the Swan and Mass Ave intersection, we're proposing something a little bit more substantial in that we're looking to reconfigure the existing signal system and make it a typical traffic light. There has been obviously some confusion there, motorists, cyclists, pedestrians, both, how that operates, and unfortunately it wasn't the right fit for that location. Fortunately, all that equipment that is out there can be reused to make it a full traffic signal. So in a nutshell, we're going to make it a regular traffic signal with lights like everyone understands and walk buttons like everyone understands. That'll still be coordinated with the intersection in the middle of town, so that there'll be some efficiencies there for traffic traveling between the two intersections. I do want to note that while we are turning it into a full traffic signal, because of how that it will work with the signals at Mass, Pleasant, and Mystic, there is not the ability to make an exclusive pedestrian phase at Swan Place. So we will need to run pedestrian movements concurrent with vehicle movements. Now, I know we've had some recent experience with this at Mass Mill and Jason, thank you. That didn't go over very well. I would argue that this is a significantly different intersection here at Swan Place. There'll just be a handful of turning vehicles in a given hour as opposed to potentially hundreds that we had at the other intersection. So I'm not anticipating the kind of conflicts or difficulties we had. We're also looking to put some significant signage up for vehicles to be aware of pedestrians and for pedestrians to be aware of turning vehicles. And we can also phase it so that if a pedestrian is waiting to cross Mass Ave, they would get a lead time so they get into the street before vehicles would be allowed to turn, so they'd be more visible to motorists. We came up with a lot of these improvements, like I said, based on comments received and our own observations. And so we took the time then to respond to those comments, provide comments back to anyone who did, provide responses to anyone who did make a comment. And then I sat with all those groups over the past week to review what our plans were and to get some additional feedback. For the most part, I think there was a very good dialogue back and forth. I think there are still three issues that some of these groups are looking to see that we weren't proposing to accommodate just now. One is automatic pedestrian phases. There was some comments that the pedestrian phase should come on automatically at both intersections. Right now, it's push button activated. The reason for that is the traffic signals have some significant efficiencies by causing folks to push the button to cross. Essentially, if no one's waiting to cross the road, we can gain some time in the cycle for vehicle movement, and that has shown some improvements in the overall operation of the intersection. So for the time being, we're not recommending making automatic pedestrian cycles. The second comment or recommendation made to the town that we aren't willing to initiate just now is heading westbound on Mass Ave. There was a request that, if you can all think about it, we have what's called a bike box on the eastbound approach to the intersection. There was a request that we put a bike box on the westbound approach. But the only real place to put it that makes sense would be in front of the right turn lane at the intersection. And we had some concerns about potentially having cyclists queue up in front of that right turn lane, and you'd have cyclists in the way of cars wanting to make a right turn.
Bless you.
Bless you. Thank you.
That could be solved in the future if we wanted to flip-flop the right turn lane and the bike lane. That way you could put the bike box in front of the through traffic, similar to the eastbound approach. But the way the lanes are configured right now came out of a fairly lengthy process when we originally designed this intersection. So what I asked the groups that I met with is that we evaluate how the intersection works after we make these other improvements, and then we can reassess the need for a bike box or flipping these lanes. It's basically paint markings and nothing more, some minor signal adjustments that can be made anytime. They don't have to be made right now. So that was the second major request that we kind of pushed back at. And the third, which is a little bit more significant, that we couldn't accommodate right now, but if you're familiar, cyclists coming out of Uncle Sam Park, if they are comfortable or experienced cyclists, they may take a left turn onto Mass Ave at the same time vehicles are taking a left turn off of Mystic Street. And The reason that has become a difficult maneuver is, again, because we made some efficiencies in the signal system. The way the traffic lights work now is, in the past, left turns from both Pleasant and Mystic would occur at the same time. They still do now, but the signal system detects if there are not vehicles waiting to take a left turn at either approach, it will adjust and allow through traffic to begin. This is most predominant in the morning coming up Mystic Street. What it does is if there are no vehicles waiting to take a left off of Pleasant onto Mass, then cars waiting to go straight from Mystic through to Pleasant are allowed to proceed. I believe it has made a great improvement in the queuing lengths all the way back to Chestnut Street. But what it also does is cyclists that have begun that left turn movement then may be met with through traffic coming from Mystic Street. Now, I've had conversations with traffic enforcement officers about how we could accommodate this, and he had concerns about allowing this movement in the first place, because we're essentially, if we allow this movement, or if we make it an actual turn, we are allowing bicycles to cross over lanes of travel, and it's essentially a traffic violation. Making a left from Uncle Sam Park, you're crossing a right turn lane and a through lane, and we don't want to necessarily make that turn official. So I had conversations with all these different folks that came in, the ABAC and Transportation Advisory Committee and other residents, in that we need to get the message out to cyclists that this is a turn that you can't assume you can go. The green light will come on through traffic, so you'll know if it's safe to go or not, but you have to look. You can't just assume it's okay to go, so we have to get the message out. And I also want to note that when the intersection was redesigned, it was designed as a two-phase bike crossing. You cross Mass Ave, get to the bike box, and then you get the next light, and you go, and you can travel eastbound. That signal was phased so that you wouldn't have to wait between those two. You get to the bike box, and then the next light allows you to go straight. So you don't have to wait for many cycles to pass before you can get from that bike box going straight. So even though you can't take that left, it's not a lengthy wait to follow the signals like we've designed. So those are the major changes we're planning on doing. Some signalization, bike signalization at Mass and Pleasant and Mystic, and then basically turning the whole Swamp Place into a regular traffic light. I did want to just so for your information on the costs of this project, essentially we were awarded a grant by the state for $1.8 million to build what we have now. The town was responsible for the design of that. We hired a consultant, and that was in the ballpark of $200,000, which standard for that kind of work. We did put some of our own funds into the construction out there. There were some changes throughout construction that the town was required to pay. We put some ornamental lights and some ornamental features to the traffic signals, and police details were much more expensive than heavily estimated by the consultant. So the town did absorb some costs, so we paid about $150,000 to $200,000 in those ancillary costs. But the additional cost to what I'm proposing right now was about $10,000 in engineering, and will be about $25,000 to $35,000 in construction. So not a significant additional investment to make what we and the folks that we've got feedback believe will be significant improvements. And we are slated to potentially, if acceptable to the board, can begin some of these improvements as soon as next week.
Great. Thank you very much. Mr. Grilli.
So, two questions, Mike, if I may. So,
Sure.
Although I'm an avid biker, what's a bike box? Is that the marking on the street that they queue in? Is that,
Yes, the green painted square.
Okay. And my other question is, as I head this morning, coming off Mystic and taking a left, and as I get to Swan Place, the three light set up now, and I understand you're replacing that. Thank you, Jesus. So when the top two are blinking, what is that a signal to me? It's about to turn red?
No, so.
I stopped here,
Sure.
but-
The way that that signal is intended to operate is yellow to slow down, then solid red to stop, and then it starts flashing red, which gives motorists the cue that if they have already stopped and there is no one in the crosswalk, they can proceed with caution. So you are allowed to proceed on a flashing red as long as you have stopped and there is no one in the crosswalk.
Okay.
But we, like you said, we're proposing to take those down and put
Yeah,
regular.
so move approval, Mr. Chairman.
There's a motion by Mr. Greeley,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Dunn. Ms. Mahan?
Just sort of piggybacking on that, I'm thrilled to hear that you're taking that down, because nobody knows what the heck it means. Second of all, I still have concerns, I'm gonna go by how you numbered them, and,
sure.
number one, which is Swan Place, when I look at number one, and I look at number 8, that talks about signs saying no bike walks on sidewalks, I wanna say the, confusing traffic signal, which has had a serious impact on traffic on Mass Ave, because I come down there all the time. I have never been backed up, stopped 1 to 2 red lights at Jason Mill and Mass Ave as I have since the traffic changes. And the only thing I can account it to, because everything else seems to be working when we get to the center, but that very confusing blinking yellow, steady red, blinking red. People have no idea. It just backs it. People just stop, if not at the blinking yellow. But I'm hearing from you, you're going to change that. The other thing that's happened, I want to say maybe that went up within the past 6 months.
What's that, those signals?
Yes.
Yes.
It happened again this morning for the 3rd time. Swear to God in the Bible, I'm not making this up. And that's why I referenced your bullet point number 8. I've had to roll down my window, and I don't know if it's because where the bike path, where it kind of stops by US Uncle Sam and starts again at Swan Place, if it's because a lot of bicyclists are kickstand. The 3rd time this morning, I had to roll my window down because this morning there were 5 bicyclists there with bicyclists on their bikes that triggered that. And they weren't trying to cross, they were just talking and congregating. So I would ask you, I don't know if it's just signage, like you say in number 8, we're gonna put up signage to the bicyclists to educate them in terms of that. My thing would be, could we, on that Swan Street signal, where you're saying it will be triggered by cyclists and vehicles by their mere presence and by pedestrians for them pushing to activate, could we make it also a push to activate for the cyclists? Because you can put a sign up there, but the 1st and 3rd time, and I'm very polite, swear to God in the Bible, I can be a pain in the butt, but each time I've been polite, I've been like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, you're keeping that traffic signal on, the 1st and 3rd time being this morning, they're like, oh, and they moved away and it went to, you know, flashing red. But the 2nd time, there were 4 bicyclists that really told me to, you know, where to go. So my thing would be, could you make that signal there activated, an activation by pedestrian and cyclists? Because they do seem to congregate there a lot. And, you know, not for anything, I don't want to be like the window lady patrol, but, I mean, I've been stuck, that's after I've been stuck in the lights 2 to 3 cycles at Mass, Jason, and Mill, and then I've been stuck at Mass and Pleasant for 1 or 2 cycles, and then I'm stuck down there again, and then I roll down the window and say, you need to ride, you're triggering off the light, you know, could you please do something? So could you make that also an activation signal for the bicyclists? Because I know you say put a sign up and educate, but no one's gonna go out there and educate personally. Maybe it gets done once, and a sign, whatever.
So I'm not sure about the sign. I'm not proposing signs to tell people to how that intersection works. Essentially,
Well, you're doing it in number 8, so.
Number 8 says no.
Am I reading it wrong?
number 8, it was a request
Okay.
for no bikes
Now,
on
where did I have,
sidewalks.
I just saw that this group does, oh, no, it's number 4, about the design group and further to educate users of this condition, which I assume is a sign. I assume it's not gonna be a person out there. What I'm saying is there any way we can, and I have no problem, the thing is, I see a legit problem. 3 times in the past 6 months, bicyclists congregate there. You're saying make it activation for pedestrian. Can we make it activation for pedestrian and bicyclists?
So just so I'm clear, what location are you referring to?
Mass and Swan, with that crazy
Yep.
yellow,
So
steady
you're saying
red.
that cyclists on Swan Place are causing the light to change, that you've observed?
I'm saying cyclists, it used to be a pizza place that's right there
Yep.
on the corner.
Yep.
When they come off Mass Ave, for some reason, and this has happened 3 times in the past 6 months that I've observed, they stop right there. I don't know if they're on the way to kickstand, if they're stopping and then going on the bike path, but it's happened 3 times. They stop right there. They're like, they literally just get off Mass Ave, and they're triggering that signal.
So what we are proposing to do is to better hone in the area by which cyclists and cars will be detected. We can better define a space exactly on the road at the stop bar or where you would expect people to be. I would hope bikes wouldn't be congregated in the roadway, and that's the only way that when we're done, hopefully that light would be triggered. We can also, I'm told by our traffic designer, that we can, they can program it so if only bikes traveling in a certain direction will cause that light to be triggered. So adding a button would be difficult. We'd have to put it close to the road, or we'd have to ask folks to get off and push the button on the sidewalk, but we still will have detection in the road for cars. And I'd like to try to get that detection to work efficiently, because we can't remove it for the vehicles. It's going to be there for the vehicles, and if it's going to be there for the vehicles, we should strive to make it work for the cyclists as well, so that we don't have 2 separate systems. I understand what you're saying, and we can monitor
What I'm saying
it.
is that curb cut on Swan Street, Mass Ave, curb cut, Swan Street. That curb cut right there. So the bikes are coming designated areas. You're saying, if a pedestrian steps out there, they're gonna have to hit the activation to make the light go. I'm saying the bicyclists, when they make that cut, they stop right there at that curb cut where the sidewalk is. I've noticed it 3 times, and congregate for whatever reason.
Like I say,
So
we
why
can.
can't we make it an activation for pedestrians and the bicycle? What I'm saying is bicyclists are triggering that at least 3 times that I've seen, that's backing up traffic on Mass Ave like crazy, because they're there.
We're going to attempt to refine the zone in which cyclists will be detected so that what you're witnessing wouldn't happen.
Okay, so if you could just make it that if a bicycle comes off Mass Ave, comes up the curb cut on Swan Street in front of that old pizza place, I think it's gonna be a new restaurant, that it doesn't trigger it there. If it could
Right.
trigger it, because they do congregate there, and that's fine if they do that, but it's doing that. And then, I did get, but I think I heard from you in terms of, I think it was number 7, the button's not working on Uncle Sam Park. You're saying that has been fixed?
Correct?
Okay, and then, and I think I also heard you, because I did see on some of the right turns that it was very confusing, and I have seen traffic where it's telling bicyclists and/or pedestrians to go, that cars have been going, but you think you've,
Yes, we have the one existing bicycle signal lens right now is for westbound traffic, and its placement and the poor placement previously of the right turn arrow seemed to be confusing drivers in the right turn lane, that when they saw that bicycle light come on, they just, without even thinking, thought
It
that
went
was the
through.
right turn indication. We've made changes to that. We've put a louver on that green light so you can only really see it from the bicycle lane. You can't see it from the right turn lane any longer. And we've better placed the right turn arrow over the right turn lane so that it's more obvious that they have a red still. Since we've made those changes, those comments, we haven't received concern or comment that those conflicts were still happening.
okay, I'll pay more attention then, because I have seen that, and maybe has that happened recently, within the past week or 2? Because
It
I
was
noticed it.
probably 4 weeks ago. I mean, I can't say it's going to constantly eliminate. People take
Right.
right turns on all the
Oh,
other
no.
indications as well when they shouldn't. But I believe that we've reduced greatly the the risk of people seeing that light inappropriately.
Yeah. Whatever you can do in that endeavor, because it took us forever, but right-hand turns, when you were coming up and down Mass Ave, whether you were going on Mystic or Pleasant, whether you were going Mass Ave Pleasant or right turn Mass Ave Mystic, people in vehicles religiously followed that. They're not doing that anymore because of those, but you're saying it's something I hate to get it to another 10 years. Okay, thank you very much. But if you could really look into that Swan Place, that thing gets triggered, even if you fix it so that people understand. I understood the yellow, red, and flashing red. I can't tell you how many times I beeped on the flashing red saying, you can go. You're saying you're going to fix that, but if you can fix that congregation of bicyclists, thank you very much.
Mr. Burr?
Thank you very much, Mike.
Sure.
One thing, I think we learned from when we tried to do the, the concurrent crossing at Mill, and Jason and Mass Ave, I think it failed for two reasons. One, it was, I don't think we did a really good job with the outreach on it. And two, it was definitely the lighting around, it's a pretty dark, it was, the lighting was not sufficient when we tried to roll that out. And that's just something I think we should pay attention to here. I agree that it's a completely different roadway, and it shouldn't be an issue, but I just think if we can make sure the lighting is, sufficient, that'll probably go a long way.
Okay.
Mr. Dunn?
Thank you very much for the project, both its, original incarnation and making it better. I had I think it was either August or September. I was biking to work, and I was taking the right onto Swan Place, and people congregating on that corner were Wayne Quinard and Jim Feeney and Officer Corey Rateau as they were studying the intersection, and I pulled up.
They weren't on bicycles.
And I pulled up, and
My guys were on bicycles.
And they looked at me and they said, "You go to work dressed like that?" And I was like, "I sure do."
Yes, you do.
But so I've experienced, I think, just about everything that you have, that you've listed, including some of the things, the fixing and some of the things you're not. One thing I'm curious, when at Swan Place, waiting to make that left, and now in the future I'll trigger the light by being there, do I get any indication that the light has been triggered? Because that's actually one of my current frustrations with the current one, is that I don't know.
Right, you won't. We're looking into that kind of technology. There isn't anything like that just now. The difference what we're proposing and what happens now is that cyclists are at that intersection, don't know if they've been detected, so they go at the next gap.
Yep.
So they leave, and then the signal goes, and then motorists are saying, why am I stopping here? There's no one. The new light will have a red light. So even if you don't know you've been detected, you're going to have a red light that says, don't go.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to wait for the green light. So we're going to have to, and I mean, that's the difference, is that we're going to control folks from doing that. Now, we are still pursuing that, some kind of indication, yes, but we don't, there isn't. It'd be kind of be out of the box.
All right.
Right now.
Cool. That makes sense. The second comment was on when at Uncle Sam Park, and you talk about that advanced maneuver going, across the left to left. That's definitely was one of my regular things, and I was recently startled to find that I had a lane of traffic that was rolling that had never happened before. And I'm fine with going through the cycle and going over to the green bike box, but I do think that if I'd known that cycle was changing beforehand, I wouldn't have been startled.
Right.
So.
Again, something else I was thinking, how could we signal that movement was about to happen?
Yeah.
So, but again, we then would be kind of legitimizing an illegal turn.
In this case, it might have even been like a bicycle email that said, hey, we're changing the light cycle.
Right.
Like then I would have, yeah.
So we are looking in conversations with ABAC and TAC and other groups to try to get information out to their users to be cautious about that movement.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I just want to thank you for your presentation. The three words come to mind. It's flexibility, responsiveness, and fastidiousness. So I can see where, in an engineering project of this scope, there could be a temptation to after all the engineering design work that went in, to try to stand firm on the design and defend it until something really bad happened. And that's not what's happened here. There's been flexibility to really look at the evidence in front of us and make changes. And I, like some of my colleagues, I'm particularly happy that we make changes on the Hawk signal. It was a great forward-thinking innovation. I don't think it quite worked out the way we expected. Sure. As far as responsiveness, I appreciate you meeting with all the groups and gathering their feedback. And the fastidiousness is when I go through this document, I know most folks can't see this, you have the comprehensive comments from the various constituencies that were submitted, and they were also very thorough, but you've thoroughly cross-referenced them to all of the recommendations in here, and we can draw, I think, in reading this, I found I could draw a very clear connection from the concerns that were raised by the public and those who are using this, and the recommendations to resolve them. And I, for one, really appreciate that, and I'm happy that we're able to go forward with this. So, thank you. Sure. So we have a motion on the table by Mr. Greeley, seconded by Mr. Dunn. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And now we have an addendum to the agenda, which I'm not going to read all of this. We're going to invite Mr. Carmen, our esteemed treasurer, to the microphone. As he steps up, we will congratulate you once again on the reaffirmation of the town's AAA bond rating.
Yes, very exciting.
Yes, and invite you to describe what's before us.
So I'm before the board tonight to ask for your approval on the issuance of $34.5 million of long-term bonds, $1.4 million of bond anticipation notes, and then approval of all the things that go into it, the preliminary offertory statements, the SEC filings, tax filings, et cetera, et cetera. And so the borrowing that's before you tonight for approval, the three major items that are on it are the Gibbs School for $26 million, Thompson School for $4 million, Hardy School for $3.5 million. I think that makes up 33.5 of the 34.5 million. And then everything else that was on the capital plan to be borrowed makes up the other million, which feels really small compared to the big school projects, but it just kind of is what it is. It's just sort of for informational purposes, what we decided to do, rather than having 2 years of successive borrowing, so the reason we went out and did the Gibbs all at once and we did the Hardy all at once was that when you're looking at the interest rate environment, so, you know, Sandy, Mike, and I, we were talking to our advisors, looking at the market, there's no indication that interest rates are going to go down. All indications from the Fed are that they are going to have this periodic, quarter point increase over the next year or two. So there's nothing that would tell us that borrowing rates in a year are going to be less than they are today. Any indication is going to be that they're going to be equal or they're going to be greater. So rather than forcing the taxpayers to pay more next year, we made the decision to borrow it all this year. The borrowing was done in accordance or consistent with the capital plan. I had sent you guys a memo where there are a couple small adjustments that we made based on circumstances, but we didn't just sort of throw what the implied borrowing in the capital plan was. We followed that directly. We had, we were in consultant with the capital planning committee, the chair, vice chair. We had talked to Adam, Sandy, and sort of all moved towards this together. As the chair had mentioned, the town had its AAA credit rating reaffirmed by Standard & Poor's, which was great news. It was very exciting. And we were happy about that. I mean, we were a little nervous because this is one of the larger borrowings we have ever done in the town, especially, we have done school projects before, but we've done MSBA reimbursed school projects before. So even on the Thompson, where you borrow for a gross of 20 million, you were getting reimbursement in right away. On this, there's nothing coming in, and we went to the market and said, we're borrowing 34.5 million, and we're borrowing and it's paying it back. So, we were very, very happy to get that rating. And then lastly, an interesting thing that's in the mechanics of this is under the Municipal Modernization Act, when we received a bond premium, I think net of investor fees, about $3.5 million on the offering. So rather than borrowing or going out for 34 million and getting 37.5 million, it's actually the reverse, which is we went out for 34 million, got 34 million, and now we owe about 31 million. So the premium goes right against the debt obligation immediately.
Excellent. Do any of my colleagues have any?
Move approval, one question?
Okay, a motion for approval by Ms. Mahan. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Byrne.
This is just because it's probably a quick yes, no. In our vote, where it talks about establishing post-issuance federal tax compliance procedures, is that just pro forma language that needs to be in there, or is that something brand new that we're doing?
Oh,
Thank you. I just didn't, I'm not familiar with it, thank you.
I'd just like to always ask this question, and Dean, you might not have an answer, but because of our AAA rating, how much do we save in interest rates on $34 million?
a lot. We spent,
Good
no, we spent, I mean, so our implied borrowing, and I forget the exact number, but when you affect the premium and everything, I think we borrowed 34 million at about 2.54% or 2.6% interest. And so if we didn't have a good credit rating, it could have been another percent and a half. And you add a percent on 34 million, and it adds up to real money pretty quick.
That's great, thank you.
Do you have other questions? I have one, and if you just addressed this and it went over my head, I apologize. I'm noticing that in the out years on the borrowing, there's a declining rate of interest on the bonds. I'm not sure I've noticed that in the past. Maybe it's just escaped my notice. Why is that?
We thought that was fairly interesting too. It's just the way the borrowing came in. So we get 6 or 7 bids. I think we got 6 or 7 bids in that day, and then we pick the best offer, and that was the best offer that was structured for us.
I see, it's 5% through 2029, then it drops to 4% for a year, and then 3% for the duration.
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, we have a motion on the table by Ms. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Byrne. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. We'll sign all the documents, and we'll
Thank you.
get
Can I
them
give
to
you a cool, one interesting thing that I think is very, I thought it was kind of interesting, is, so in getting ready for the S&P presentation, learning about credit ratings, you start to figure out why you have a AAA and how do you maintain it. And one of the things that I learned about getting a AAA rating is you have to have sort of a minimum amount of community wealth. You have to jump up into, I guess, what you'd call the statistically wealthy category of communities. If you're not there, you cannot be a AAA. And so what I thought was cool was, what I learned was some communities are so rich, no matter what they do, they're going to be AAA. Like, they can just screw up their government, but they're just so rich they can pay their way out of it. What I learned was Arlington is actually sort of the minimum amount of wealthy to be a AAA community. And the way we get to a AAA is on the other large category of your rating is management of the town. And so Arlington makes up for it, gets there on its minimum wealth, and then exceeds most communities in terms of management of the town. And that's its elected leaders, its appointed committees, and then its professional full-time management, which I thought was really, really cool, because I think when you sit in long-range planning meetings or budget and revenue task force or selectmen's meeting, fiscal discipline is not like fun, exciting, and sexy, right? It's just boring. But where that boring pays off is when you affect the premium and your borrowing is at 2.5% and not 4%, and then the interest came in actually for the whole project about $2 million less than we thought it was going to be. So there's some pretty cool things, that I learned about it, and I thought you guys would be happy to know that there are, direct rewards to having discipline at all times.
We appreciate you sharing that. If we knew you were going to share that, we would have slid you in under our Thanksgivings at the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carmen. We now move on to our consent agenda. All of the items on the consent agenda are typically taken by one vote with minimal discussion. Minutes of meetings, October 30th, 2017, reappointment Arlington Cultural Council. S. Rebecca Holmes Farley, term to expire 10/31/2020. Vote, special municipal, we're going to, that's tabled. Please be aware that I will take a motion to table that. Number 7. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Table?
Second aye.
Okay. Okay, on the consent agenda, as read, 8, requests, First Lights, Whittemore Park, Jefferson Cutter House, Thursday, November 30th, and B, free parking Saturdays in the Russell and Water Street municipal lots for holiday shopping. Beth Locke, Executive Director, Arlington Chamber of Commerce. Request special one.
Mr. Chairman, sorry,
Yes.
we just need to amend that. That's for the month of December.
For the month of December, okay.
Right.
Okay. And the last weekend in November, I believe. It's
Okay.
as per the request that was submitted to us, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Sorry.
Request special one-day beer and wine license, 12/5/17 at Robbins Memorial Town Hall for a celebration of organization, Deanne DuPont, President Foodling, and request special one-day beer and wine license, 12/9/17 Robbins Library Reading Room for private event, Natalia Bregel. Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Ms. Mahan. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to give it to Mr. Byrne. Is there anybody here wishing to address any of those items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? It is unanimous, and yes, bless you. Mr. Allen.
Can I just say something on the parking?
Certainly.
Please note that this on-street meters still need to be paid.
Yes.
During these times. This is
Yes.
only for
For
the
the
lots.
lots, only for the lots.
Good point,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now move on to appointments. Arlington Committee on Tourism and Economic Development, Bob Tosi Jr., term to expire 11/30/2020. Bob, if you want to step up to the mic, introduce yourself to us.
Thank you, Joe. Bob Tosi, longtime resident, applying to fill a position on the Arlington Tourism and Economic Development Committee. Appreciate your consideration for me at my appointment to the committee. Arlington is known as a restaurant destination. I hope to build on that and increase foot traffic and further boost our cultural destinations, the Cyrus Dallin Museum, the Old Schwab Mill, the Arlington Historical Society, and the Smith Museum, and so many other destinations that we're very fortunate to have, and I can see a lot of positive growth we can do.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Greeley?
Move approval. Bob is one of those that all of us were thankful for earlier. He's done a number of things in terms of volunteerism and service on committees, and real pleasure to support him for the Arlington Tourism and Economic Development Committee.
Second.
Okay, second by Ms. Mahan. Anything else from my colleagues? Yes, I think Bob I think you epitomize boosterism for the town of Arlington, and it's appropriate that you serve us in this capacity. So on a motion by Mr. Greeley, second by Ms. Mahan. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Congratulations. Thank you very much for stepping up to this.
See you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
We now have an appointment to the Community Preservation Committee of Ann Woodward, term to expire 6/30/2018. If you'd like to come forward, and before you introduce yourself, I want to say that as per our procedures here of the board, for appointments to the Community Preservation Committee, the manager and I have brought forward, we interviewed several candidates who submitted their resumes for consideration, and we were very impressed by Ms. Woodward. We'll let her tell us a little bit about herself. I would remind the board also that according to the procedures that we laid out when the CPC was established, the manager will join us in this vote. So,
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. It's nice to meet you. I'm Ann Woodward. I live on Renfrew Street. It seems to be a popular street tonight.
you weren't that anonymous
I-
person, were you?
No, and I don't.
Okay.
And the town has taken all my trees, so no worries. I'm just delighted to have the chance to apply to be a part of this committee. My background is in affordable housing, and so the Community Preservation Committee's work, that it includes open space, historical properties, and affordable housing, is great interest to me. I have worked in the public sector before. I know how important it is for a town to put some money into a project to demonstrate its enthusiasm and support, and it allows for a lot of leverage. So I look forward to the opportunity, if I'm approved, to be able to contribute to that.
Great, thank you very much. Did you have anything you wish to say, Ms. Bennett? Nothing? My colleagues have anything they wish to ask? Yep, Mrs. Mahan.
Move approval, and
Yeah.
I would ask, through the chair to Attorney Heim, if it, I'm actually writing a letter in support for one of the requests that's going to go through CPA to the CPC. Would it, A, be appropriate for me to mention that now, or C, should I mention that I'm about to do that?
No.
And I don't want to say what it is until you tell me if it's something appropriate to highlight. And what I'm saying, if it's a new member and I can kind of put something in her bonnet that I'm kind of pushing for, and perhaps others might be, but
We're not taking an official action on anything tonight.
we're just appointing her.
So I'm not sure what.
So if I could say, be surprised if you see a letter of support from me as an individual and Hardy School alumni to the CPA requests concerning monies to designate playground, a consultant plan to sort of say what should be done to best utilize the playground that's outside of Hardy School, which myself personally, having gone there back in the 70s, really hasn't changed all that much, and really, so don't be surprised if you
Not a
see a letter of
preservation
support
project,
on behalf of the Hardy PTO from myself, that, not saying you have to vote for it, but I just, since you're here and you're brand new, I kind of wanted to put a plug in, and don't be surprised that if I haven't already called other members of the committee, just to say, look out for my letter that's on its way.
Okay.
So I think, Ms. Mahan, I will note that this is probably the case for most of us. Some of us have been approached for letters of support. It's part of the grant process for the Community Preservation Act. And I think my response, and I won't reveal either, I've been asked on several of these, is that I would be happy to also consider writing letters as an individual. I have dissuaded proponents of the grants from bringing them to the board for endorsement by this board, because I feel like that's putting the cart before the horse. When we set this up, I feel that we set up a process whereby we entrust all the community preservation members to vet all of the applications that are before them fairly, put together a package of recommendations, and then we did, when we established that the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the Capital Planning Committee would then be consulted. So we look forward to your fair and balanced approach on that. And I was negligent in saying, I think that we know that we were replacing a spot that opened up when David Levy left the board, who brought a wealth of affordable housing background with him. So we were very pleased to find you, or to have you come forward and submit your application for us, because I think you're filling a void that David did leave when he left that committee. So thank you very much. It's very important. We appreciate it. So on a motion by Ms. Mahan, did I have a second on that?
Second.
Whoa, okay. We'll give it to Mr. Greeley. Seconded by Mr. Greeley. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Congratulations. Thank you very much for your service.
Adam, right?
Oh, Adam.
I said aye.
Oh, okay. It is unanimous.
You gotta turn.
6-0. It is unanimous.
Excuse me.
7-month term.
Okay. Next, appointment of the Conservation Commission, a familiar face, Pamela Heidel. Term to expire 6/30/2020. If you want to come up, Pam.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hello. Step right on up to the mic.
Hi, my name is Pam Heidel. I'm excited about the Conservation Commission. My commitment to natural resource protection dates back many, many decades. My educational background is in natural resources, and I've been an environmental planner as a profession and have appeared before many conservation commissions throughout the state. So I'm happy to have about the prospects of joining one. So.
Thank you very much. I should note that Ms. Heidel was a former member and chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals for us, and Mr. Byrne and I alternately served with her on the Master Plan Advisory Committee as well, and so.
Happy to move approval.
Mr. Byrne moves approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We got a ways to go, folks. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for being willing to serve again.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, all those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank
Sorry.
you.
I resisted asking her opinion on the Norway maple.
There you go. Well, we have an appointment to the tree committee coming up right now.
Oh, that's right.
I
Stephen
wonder if he
Moore.
still wants to do it.
I was saving that.
Term to expire 11/30/2020.
Did we scare him away?
I don't think so.
No, he's
Come on
right
up.
here.
Yeah.
Come on up.
Steve Moore, 64 Piedmont Street, here in Arlington. I've lived in town quite a while and don't have a background in trees or arborists or anything like that. However, I know that one of the key aspects that I think makes Arlington kind of special has been our tree canopy and commitment to that. And I have to tell you, I was very heartened to hear all the discussion you had on the tree hearings earlier tonight. I know it probably took up an inordinate amount of time for you, but that discussion shows the town's commitment. I think it affirms my belief that it's very important to the quality of the town to have a focus, and a long-term focus on that. So I am looking forward to joining the committee if you approve. And just one plug for the plan which has been being worked there for the tree plan for the future management to get out ahead of these issues. A lot of work has gone into it, from what I can tell, and I think it's a great organized approach. And I think the implementation of it will streamline and certainly improve the ability to get ahead of all the problems which are coming. Ms. Mahan, as you say, the Norway maples are in some serious trouble all over town. We're trying to get ahead of that. So I hope to be able to help make that happen, and certainly I'm open to any questions you might have of me.
Great. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Mahan, second by Mr. Greeley. I want to just say thank you very much for your willingness to serve. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you so much. We look
Thanks for your
forward to your
time.
contribution. We
Appreciate
appreciate it. Okay, we now move on to licenses and permits. Request for wine and malt license, change of manager, Sugo Cucina Italiana, RJM Incorporated, 162 Massachusetts Avenue, Rudolph, Maniscalco.
Good evening,
Hi, good
gentlemen,
evening.
ladies. I'm requesting to change manager to myself, being the manager that was my partner, is no longer my partner, retired. So I'm looking to take over the reins.
Okay.
Move
Sure.
approval.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Greeley. Do we have any questions? Mr. Dunn?
Are you still training all your servers before they start?
I do,
All right.
yeah,
You've heard my speech about how the mistakes happen.
yes.
All right.
I remember,
Good.
years ago. You gave me that speech 2 years ago,
I'll save it then.
yeah.
You remember the guy in the end did that?
Yeah, he's very good at that. Very good. Okay, any other questions? All right, we have a motion by Ms. Mahan, second by Mr. Greeley. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Thank you for
Happy
investing in the
holidays.
town. Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
Next, we have a request, Sons of Italy Late Night Event, 11/25/17 to 11/26/17, Sons of Italy, 19 Prentice Road, Thomas Cacavaro. Another familiar face. Come on up, Mr. Cacavaro.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have a class reunion that night, and they've requested if they can stay an extra hour. A couple of them might get lucky, I guess.
I didn't hear that.
Move approval, and I will state my happily married sister Joanne, who was in that class, will be there that night.
Okay, it's a motion of Ms. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Dunn.
I'm going to support this with the requirement that Mr. Cacavaro report back to us on the luck of the evening for some.
Of the class of 1987.
Absolute.
1987. Okay. Any other questions, comments? I think we just usually ask when you expect the last call will be. I mean, 1 o'clock, you're going to shut down?
Well, we won't go to 1 o'clock. I usually do 15 minutes before.
Okay.
So probably 12:45 will be the last call.
Okay, great. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you very much. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
Take care. Next request, Menotomy Grill and Tavern, late night event, 12/31/17 to 1/1/18. Menotomy Grill and Tavern, 25 Massachusetts Avenue, William Lyons.
Good evening.
Billy, yeah. How you doing?
It's for New Year's, so.
Yep.
Move approval?
Okay, motion by Ms. Mahan,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Grilli. And you have done this how many years now? It's quite a few, I think.
Yeah, 4.
4? Excellent, okay. Any further questions, answers? All right, same as last year, and
Yep, 12:30.
12:30. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you
Thanks,
very
Billy.
much.
Thank you.
Good luck, Happy New Year.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, and happy Thanksgiving. Yep. Okay, we now move on to Citizens Open Forum. And I want to make sure I make clear, Citizens Open Forum, this is not to address items that are on our agenda later in the agenda. So, except in unusual circumstances, any matter presented for consideration of the board shall neither be acted upon nor a decision made the night of the presentation in accordance with the policy under which the open forum was established. It should be noted that there is a 3-minute time limit to present a concern or request. And first on the list is Winnell Evans, 20 Orchard Place.
Winnell Evans, Orchard Place. I am also a member of the Residential Study Group, and I'm here tonight just to register a comment about the inclusion of the zoning recodification on the upcoming warrant. In the Residential Study Group, we spent almost 6 months honing the language for 6 articles. So I'm very concerned that this recodification of the zoning bylaw is trying to be squeezed into too short a period of time. And I say that comparatively, and I know that Mr. Chapdelaine and Mr. Heim are intimately familiar with how long this all took us. The other reasons that I think this is premature, aside from the volume of what is being done here, is that the first reading draft was only presented in July. The third is not yet available. It's behind schedule by about a week already. In a reading of the second draft, I actually sat down and compared the second draft to the existing zoning bylaws, pretty much word by word by word. This took me a couple of days. And I found so many typos. For instance, in the R2 zone, the front setback, which is indeed 20 feet, has suddenly become 25 feet. In the R3 zone, the lot minimum, which is 5,000 feet, has suddenly become 6,000 feet. And I say this not to cast any aspersions on the zoning recodification working group, but just to show how detailed this work needs to be, how many eyes need to be put on this, what the potential for inadvertent changes is. This is the first revision in over 40 years, so I don't think there's any reason that we need to meet a date of town meeting 2018. This is theoretically is going to last us another 40 years if it's done properly and if we take our time with this. My other objection to trying to get this ready for town meeting is that this is going to occur right after the Christmas, New Year's, and I'm leaving out all kinds of other religious holidays, but in other words, after a period of major holidays. And I just think that expecting town meeting members, never mind interested citizens, to be able to pay attention to this and to really go into it on the level of detail that it requires is just, I just don't think it's realistic. And finally, I'd also like to say that not only do these typos and there are some language changes that actually do affect policy, in addition to that, I think we're also kind of opening the door to really making life difficult for inspectional services, engineering, and the other departments that have enforcement duties in the town of Arlington. Because if these bylaws contain unintended language, then they're the ones who are going to be on the front line trying to deal with this, and I don't think it's fair to them, finally. So I hope that, that this process can be given the time that it needs and the time that it deserves, and that it will not be rushed to make upcoming town meeting. Thank you very much.
Paul Parise, 106 Hemlock Street.
Hello, how are you? I'm a longtime resident of Arlington. I've lived in Arlington since 1980. I was born here, actually, but then we moved out shortly thereafter, so I forget the early years. I have very similar comments as to Winnell Evans, and I won't repeat all those because I think she's made many of these points. I've been following the zoning recodification process since it began. I've attended some of the public forums. I've seen some of the information online that's been presented, and I similarly had concerns that inadvertently, not through any intention or maliciousness, but inadvertently, there are things being changed, left out, or misrepresented. And I think it's really important that we have a chance to look at that and get it right. Now, as I understand it, the zoning recodification process is not supposed to be producing any substantive changes, that those changes will then come in the next phase through the normal process of town meeting articles with debate and discussion and so forth. And it's very appropriate. So I would like to see that we have sufficient time, especially as a resident. I've tried to follow it. It's difficult. There is not a final draft out now that I'm aware of, but yet I see it being announced tonight that a special town meeting is planned for February to discuss this and adopt it. It really doesn't seem like enough time to me at all. I'm not even sure the regular town meeting is enough time. It may be, but I think once everyone has a chance to look at it and assure themselves that it's been done with the intent as it was designed, we'll all be happy. I want to get to the end of the process and have a lot of confidence that this document is what was intended. No substantive changes, make it easier to read, better organization, conforms to state laws, and so forth. And I think if we make that goal and get there, we'll all be happy in town. If we don't, we'll have a lot of backbiting, arguments later about, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And as Winnell said, some of the inspectional services will have difficulty interpreting it because we thought we meant this, we thought we meant that. So that's all I really want to say. It's a general comment. I really think we need to spend the proper amount of time. I've been here over 35 years, so I've lived under the other zoning laws for that time. I expect to live at least for a while under the new zoning laws, and hopefully they're an improvement for everyone. I had sent an email early on in August to the Zoning Recodification Board, and I think to the members of the Board of Selectmen and some of the town officials expressing these concerns and thoughts. And that's really all I would like to present at this time, and hope that you guys consider perhaps extending the time for us to do this the right way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anyone else here for Citizens Open Forum? Hearing none, that item is closed. The next item, if I could have Arlington Public Art update, if I could have a motion to postpone.
Move to, second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Burns, seconded by Ms. Mahan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we now move on to, for approval, opening of the warrant for the annual town meeting 2018. Mr. Chapdelaine. I don't know if you, I guess you're not on here.
For the annual town meeting, I would turn to Doug and Marie if there's any.
Sure. Yes, we have it in front of us.
So, did we skip 18?
We
We
just
did.
postponed.
We
Oh,
postponed.
sorry.
Mr. Chairman, do you need comment from town council, or?
I guess not.
I mean,
That's pretty
I'd
straightforward.
like to make a motion that we vote to open the warrant for the annual town meeting taking place on Monday, April 23rd, 2018 at 8 p.m. The warrant will open on Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 at 8 a.m. and will remain open until 12 p.m. on Friday, January 26, 2018.
Second. Moved by Ms. Mahan, second by Mr. Grilli. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Next item is vote special town meeting, February 12th, 2018. That is Mr.
Thank you.
Chapdelaine. I apologize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we are asking that the board call a special town meeting on February 12th for two primary reasons. One is the intention of bringing forth the zoning recodification, as the two speakers just mentioned and expressed some concern about, but also very importantly to be able to access additional funding that's expected to be needed to move the 6th classroom addition at the Hardy Elementary School forward. So even should there be a decision through the zoning recodification process to delay further or to hold off on decision-making process, we still do need the board to consider holding a special town meeting on February 12th so that we can access funding to keep the Hardy Addition project moving forward. Between now and the warrant opening, there may be some other small matters of cleanup that we'd like to place on the warrant, but I don't have any of those that I'm aware of right now.
Okay, Ms. Mahan.
And I believe we have to do a two-step. First, we have to vote to approve and open, the opening of the warrant for the special town meeting.
Actually, I think we have to vote the meeting itself
That's what I'm
first.
saying.
Okay,
Vote the meeting itself. That's the first motion.
okay. Second.
On Monday, February 12th, 2018, at 8 PM is the date of the special town meeting, correct, Mr. Chapdelaine?
Correct.
So that's moved by Ms. Mahan, second by Mr. Grilli. All those in favor?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Dunn.
No, okay, sorry. I apologize. I had to,
Okay.
I'm ready.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. Okay, why don't you just continue, Ms. Mahan?
I'd like to vote that the selectmen open the warrant for the special town meeting to be held on Monday, February 12th, 2018, at 8 PM. The warrant will open on Wednesday, December 6th, 2017, at 8 AM, and will remain open until Wednesday, December 6th, 2017, until 4 PM.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Mahan.
Second.
Second by Mr. Byrne. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Thanks for letting me say all the legal language. I'll get into that,
Absolutely,
sorry.
absolutely.
Thank you to my
Oh,
colleagues.
you're the one for it. With my colleagues' indulgence, I'd like to suggest that we take item 23, discussion and vote of the Alton Street loading zone revision out of order. With hearing no
You're the
objection.
chairman.
Hearing no objection.
No objection.
We will take up the discussion and vote, Alton Street loading zone revised proposal. Mr. Chapdelaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as the board recalls, at its last meeting, there was a proposal before the board regarding the establishment of a loading zone on Alton Street from 8 AM to 5 PM, Monday through Saturday. After hearing feedback from residents and business owners in attendance, and the property owner abutting the proposed loading zone, the board requested that I go back, work with the Planning and Community Development Office, namely the Economic Development Coordinator, and see if we could work up a tighter timeframe for the loading zone that would have less of an impact on the abutting business to the loading zone. So Ally Carter, the Economic Development Coordinator, did just that, went back and met with, or spoke with at least, all of the businesses who receive deliveries at Broadway Plaza, both on Medford Street as well as via Alton Street or the alley accessible from Alton Street, excuse me. After doing that, also after reviewing the complaints, the parking complaints that had been sent in prior to the board's last meeting, the recommendation that Ally has made and that I felt very comfortable bringing forward is 8 AM to 3 PM, Monday through Friday. It seems as though via Ally's conversations with the business owners that they can work with their delivery services to stay within those timeframes, and those that would come outside of those timeframes have trucks small enough to utilize the alley, and that timeframe would also have a lessened impact on the operation of Alton Street Dance, whose owner was here to express concerns at the last meeting. I understand this is probably still not a perfect solution for all parties, but I do think it is a proposal or a recommendation that can alleviate the concerns and the impacts of delivery trucks utilizing Alton Street for deliveries.
Great, Ms. Mahan.
I'd like to make a motion to limit the Alton Street loading zone timeframe to Monday through Friday from 8 AM to 3 PM.
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Dunn. Okay, I'll invite this discussion and questions by the board, and then if there's anyone here wishing to speak to it. Yeah.
The proposal we talked about last time included talking about moving a handicap spot and stuff like that. Is that included in, Mrs. Mahan, is that package we talked?
Yeah, I'm sorry, if I may, Mr. Chair, I left that detail. This would be that same proposal,
Yep.
moving that handicap spot from the corner of Alton and Broadway over to the sort of opposing corner of Alton and Broadway on the Broadway side of American Alarm.
Also, I'll amend my motion to include the relocation of the handicap parking spot as Mr. Dunn has cited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments on the compromise proposal? Yeah, Mr. Byrne?
Yeah, I just think that, once again, it's important to thank Ally Carter for her work here. I think, she obviously put a lot into helping guide us in this decision. And, I know certainly getting in touch with all of these owners is not an easy thing to do, so I'm really grateful for all her efforts there.
Actually, may I add one more thing,
Chaplain, yeah.
Mr. Chairman? I think it's important to mention, I did also specifically speak to the chief of police about this matter, to make clear and make sure I could get commitment that if the board did vote to establish this loading zone, that we could very firmly and effectively issue violations for those who did not obey the loading zone, understanding that, again, this was not the perfect solution for everybody, but that we wanted people to utilize this solution. The chief absolutely committed to be able to put resources toward that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to the compromise proposals before us? Mr. Ruderman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. My name is Michael Ruderman. I live at 9 Alton Street. I'm speaking tonight for myself and for my wife, Susan, who is here also. Let me begin by saying that we do not support the idea of a loading zone on Alton Street, a street that was not designed for heavy truck traffic. In fact, it's one of only 8 streets that are called out in the entire town in the traffic rules and regulations under Article 724, that there should be no trucks, no delivery trucks on it at all, except to access the areas which are otherwise inaccessible, meaning through the alley that runs through the back of the businesses on Broadway Plaza. The establishment of a loading zone doesn't eliminate the noise and the pollution that disrupts our work and the quiet enjoyment of our property. The bars and restaurants at Broadway Plaza were told at the time of the issuing of their special permits that they must use the alley for their deliveries, but the violations continue without consequences. We have suggested creating a loading zone on Medford Street, signalized at both ends without residences, which is already used for deliveries principally to Starbucks on the further corner. That loading zone is no further away from the doors where the deliveries are hand trucked in from either end, from the Alton Street end of the alley. The deliveries go to the central point in the alley. Medford Street is exactly the same distance as Alton Street. Again, the businesses that are insisting on taking their deliveries on Alton Street are violating their special permits, and the accommodation that is proposed will not remedy the problem. Monday to Friday, we believe, is too limited. 3 p.m. is too limited. We've been providing the town manager with the evidence throughout this process of the deliveries coming through Alton Street from the early morning until dinner time, 7 days a week. And we were asking at the previous meeting for 8 to 5, 6 days a week. We're losing out in the compromise that is being proposed tonight. We've been told to wait and see how it goes. Well, we've been waiting since 2014 when the first of the large bar restaurants common ground was approved for that area. We've tried to settle this ourselves or deal with the situation ourselves without having to occupy the board's time with this by taking up our concerns. My wife in particular has been treated very rudely by the truck drivers that she has spoken to, and this is deeply disturbing. So we request the following tonight, 3 things. Please return the loading zone hours to what was proposed at the previous meeting here, 8 to 5, 6 days a week, Monday to Saturday. Rather than waiting and seeing, we ask for the enforcement to begin immediately with the installation of bollards on the opposite side of Alton Street from the proposed loading zone to visually and physically enforce the fact that trucks are to load or offload on one side of the street and not to park on the sidewalk on the other side, which they are doing now to the detriment both of the sidewalk and the neighboring business. Third, we'd like to know that our police are instructed to, as Mr. Chapdelaine said, exercise rigorous enforcement, including flyers that can be handed out to truck drivers to take back to their dispatch offices. We'd like to have a contact number that we can check on in the next 3 months to find out how many warnings and how many citations have been issued in the enforcement of whatever is approved tonight. Thank you for your time.
one question, please?
Ms. Mahan, then Mr. Dunn.
I'm wondering why you're asking 8 to 5 when we're doing a more limited from 8 to 3? You want to extend it longer from 8 to 3?
The proposal that was in front of you at the previous meeting was to have a loading zone established from 8 to 5. That would collect the traffic.
My motion here tonight, the initial part was a motion for 8 AM to 3 PM, Monday through Friday. But you're asking 8 AM to 5 PM? Or are you saying you're in favor of the 8 AM to 3? If you're in favor of 8 AM, 8A to 5P, you must be in favor of 8A to 3P.
We feel that those hours are too limited for the number of hours that the delivery companies and drivers are
Okay,
currently
I guess
using.
I'm just confused because you asked for an 8 AM
It's our
to
feeling-
5 PM.
it's our feeling that the
But I just
longer-
want to be clear that my motion is 8 AM to 3 PM, which is
Yeah.
more stringent than your request, so we've definitely fulfilled that. And also inherent in that, and I apologize, Mr. Dunn picked up that I didn't include, which I know Mr. Byrne also had extensive conversation regarding the relocation of the handicap parking spot, but also there is a process in place in terms of, through the town manager and the Arlington Police Department, to begin enforcing not just informational flyers, but ticketing of any delivery trucks that violate that. So that should be inherent in the motion, so. I just wanted to make sure, because 8 AM to 3 PM, thank you.
Done?
I'm on the same question, or at least a similar question. I'm surprised that that you prefer 8 to 5. Could you help me understand that more?
We would prefer 8 to 5 because that would provide a greater opportunity for the trucks to use a designated loading zone and not to park where they are parking presently, which is both sides of Alton Street, in front of the residences, in front of driveways, in front of the alley itself. We feel that 8 to 5 would give a broader opportunity for the trucks that are making deliveries to comply with the new regulations, rather than clogging up the street and jeopardizing pedestrians. And we think it would be a larger window of opportunity, that's all.
Okay, thank you, and I understand now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I had one question in regards to this before we hear other. Has this question of bollards been examined, the feasibility of the bollard proposal?
Yes. So the Rudimans had asked me to inquire with DPW whether or not we could install bollards on the American Alarm side of Alton Street that would physically prevent trucks from parking on the sidewalk. So I did have a conversation with Mike Rademacher about that. And general terms, it is feasible. There is some challenge in the middle of the sidewalk because I believe there's a transformer box or some type of utility box that would create a sidewalk width issue that we'd have to deal with. And then more specifically, it was Mr. Rademacher's thought that instead of bollards, we could even consider installing some type of U-shaped bike rack so that we'd get a double utility out of it. While we would block trucks while also providing some bike parking for the center. So it is feasible. And our suggestion that I had shared with the Rudimans was that we see how successful this loading zone is before making any decision to install some type of physical impediment on the sidewalk opposite.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to this? Yep.
I'm Elizabeth Camerata, owner of Alton Street Dance, and I just actually want to say I truly appreciate the compromise between 8 to 3. Of course, we all know that I wasn't in favor of the loading zone, but I truly feel like that is a reasonable compromise in the area. So any other questions that, you want to ask me as a business owner, I'm happy to answer. I do have one question. What is a regular parking spot going to be replaced? So there's 2 regular non-handicap parking places, and then there is the handicap one that was being relocated. So when the restriction, like the 8 to 3 is over, is that going to be a regular parking place then with a meter?
That was our idea, to do that.
Okay,
yes.
I'm sorry if I'm repeating.
No, that's okay.
Excellent. So I just want to say thank you. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being involved.
Anyone else wishing to speak to this matter? Anything more from my colleagues? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Ms. Mahan, seconded by Mr. Dunn, to approve the revised proposal that's been presented to us of Monday to Friday, 8 to 3. I'm sorry, what was the other piece of it? with the relocation, relocation of the accessible parking spot. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much, Mr. Chaplin, and please thank Ms. Carter for her work on it, and thank you to all of the stakeholders in the neighborhood who have contributed to the discussion. We now move back to number 22, discussion of the comptroller recruitment process. As members of the board know, this past week, our comptroller, Mr. Viskey, did give his notice to us. He will be with us through January 8th, I believe it is. In discussing the matter with the town manager, we were brainstorming some ideas about how to ensure some continuity of service and take a look at some of the other governance issues around the comptroller. So, Mr. Chaplin, if you wanted to, we had discussed that you might bring forward some proposals, which I see in the memo to us. You do have some suggestions on how we might approach the procurement of temporary services.
Absolutely. So I actually, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's several items in the board's packet, and my cover memo is the document entitled, I think it was, sorry, let me just give you the right one, COMPTR_112017. And that cover memo just lays out that I'd be asking for the board's approval, or at least consideration on 3 matters, and then a 4th matter for at least the entertainment of a discussion. For those first 3 matters, one would be, I'll actually start with number 3, the authorization to work with both Sandy Pooler, the deputy town manager, and Mr. Viskey, the comptroller, to identify options for interim accounting services to assist the town during the time between Mr. Viskey's departure and his replacement start date. Once a satisfactory option has been screened and vetted, then I would come back to the board for approval of that option. So that's probably the most immediate option while we have Rich here to be able to vet exactly what we need for interim services, see what, whether it be a private firm or an individual, to be able to bridge the gap between when Rich leaves in early January and when his replacement is hired. So do you want to take these one at a time? What do you think's most?
Yeah, take them one at a time.
Move approval.
All of them?
Oh, well, no, this one.
This one. Move approval of,
So move approval of the proposal.
1 through 3.
Yes, move approval of number 3, interim services, the interim services plan.
Interim services plan, okay.
Second.
Second, moved by Mr. Dunn, second by Ms. Mahan. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just have one question on that?
Sure.
Inherent in that, if it hasn't already been accomplished, is, is this inappropriate? I don't know if Attorney Heim can give me guidance on this. Stop me if either of these inappropriate questions to ask. Inherent in that with the interim services would be an update on the July 31st audit.
The audit status?
Audit status?
Yeah, you know,
and free cash status. Is it appropriate for me to ask about that?
Sure.
And can that be included, or do you think that isn't something to be asking about?
I think that's totally appropriate to be included, that when we come back with the interim service plan, we can update the board, whether it be via me or Rich, what the status of key milestones for the comptroller's office are before the departure and how we will plan to meet those milestones during that interim period. I think that's totally appropriate.
Okay, and then if it's appropriate, either one of my colleagues or through the chairman, the town manager, if there could sort of be punch list dates about when is sort of a drop dead date that each of those individual tasks should be done and how we work backward from there.
Yep.
Whether it's one or some of the consulting companies that we have under our employ right now, or whether it's this interim person or company. If I'm phrasing that appropriately? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not the
I
finance
understand.
person, but I'm just trying to take, okay, thank you.
So the second part of what we have before us, I had discussed this briefly with the town manager. I think we all know as a board that we were in the process of, Mr. Byrne and I were in the process of conducting performance review on the current comptroller. This involved actually reaching out to a lot of stakeholders who work on more of a daily basis with the comptroller, and I think it highlights something of a dilemma, I think, for us in that others work much more closely with the comptroller on a day-to-day basis than do this board, although, right now, under our current bylaws, Town Manager Act, comptroller reports directly to the board. It struck me that it's worth our having a conversation, and, we don't necessarily have to come to a resolution of where we want to go now, but it's worth having a conversation, I think, at this point, when we're about to make a transition, about whether or not there are any changes, either in approach or statutorily, that we want to pursue to bring the comptroller more tightly under the town managers or deputy town managers' umbrella in the financial management of the town. It was actually, for me, in the discussions I did have with some of the stakeholders, it was very interesting to learn how closely linked the comptroller is to some of the other functions. I mean, I think the treasurer said that they might as well have an open phone line between the two offices and the management of the offices, and they've certainly cooperated on a lot of projects, including, the expanding the Munis installation, cash management, and such. So, especially as we're about to open warrants on town meeting, I think it's worth our having a discussion about whether we want to pursue a warrant article around a statutory change and changing the formal governance structure, or maybe we want to pursue a formulation similar to that the new treasurer has pursued with more of a memorandum of understanding arrangement where there is, because I think that there is a little bit of a cognitive dissonance right now. And so I had asked the manager to come forward with some of his thoughts on his observations from his day-to-day workings and for our consideration. And I will also say, before I give him the floor, that I've also been reaching out to some of the others in our financial oversight boards as well for some of their thoughts as well, and how they receive service from the comptroller's office, and some of the governance considerations that they might recommend as we look at this. So, Mr. Chaplain, did you have anything you wanted to?
Yes.
Point of clarification, we're not discussing this. Are you recommending we vote on, we have?
No. This is just a discussion.
So,
This is
we
just
want to
discussion.
discuss, right, okay.
It's just a discussion.
So I do, if I may, Mr. Chair, I do want to talk about the proposed recruitment and screening process and the job description while this agenda item is being discussed, but on the matter that the chairman raised, I do think, and there doesn't have to be any vote at all tonight, it can just be that there's a discussion and future consideration is given, but I do think whenever there's a vacancy, especially in this area where there's been sort of concerted efforts over the past several years to create one finance department in town, that we give this consideration. And not to repeat what the chair said, I do think there is a heightened level of accountability that goes along with having really any employee be able to report to a manager on a day-to-day basis. And I think that the comptroller's position in this case could benefit from consideration of that. I'm frankly not wedded to one solution that I would recommend, or even necessarily picky about exactly how it would look. I went back to the DOR report that was performed in 2012, and there they highlighted how Lexington, Needham, and Brookline treated all communities that we would probably like to favorably compare ourselves to. And they all do it differently, but they all make it clear that the comptroller has day-to-day reporting responsibility to the town manager. In one iteration, I believe it's Brookline, the selectmen are still the appointing authority, but it's made clear that there is day-to-day reporting to the manager. Needham, I believe it was the Board of Selectmen approves at the recommendation the hiring and can't be terminated without the approval of the Board of Selectmen. And Lexington was a little bit of a hybrid of both. The selectmen are the appointing authorities, but they only do so at the recommendation of the manager. But again, day-to-day reports to the town manager. So I think really tonight it was more food for thought for the board, and if we want to discuss it, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I do think it's an opportunity. As we go towards this spring, I don't think there's any hurry. I think they'll, I believe we're still on track to have a ballot question in April to consider the treasurer-collector's position. Should that be successful, and this board is interested in having the discussion, there could be a warrant article in the annual town meeting in the spring that contemplates these further steps regarding the comptroller and a finance department.
Anything else? Anyone else? Mr. Byrne, then Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Adam, and again, thank you, Joe. I think Joe's really, done quite a bit of work on this, and he's been reaching out to a lot of people since we initially met with Rich. I think that a timing for a discussion about this, kind of who the comptroller reports to, it's an appropriate one to have at this time. I think it's important to have some dotted line from the comptroller to the Board of Selectmen, and I think that's, that was clear in Adam's recommendations. And it's not only for, overall town governance. I think one thing I learned when we met with Rich is that I think there would be a lot of clarity for the comptroller position as well. Just when he initially wanted to have a discussion, concerning the performance review, it seemed like he wasn't really clear who to reach out to. And that's something that I don't think any, that shouldn't be occurring. I think there should be a clear, a clear line of communication between anyone who works for the town and who they report to. And I think that if we can, take any steps to clear up that uncertainty, that it would be a step worth taking.
Mr. Dunn?
In general, I think I'm definitely very open to doing some sort of change. I don't have a strong opinion of either at this point about what exactly it should be, but I think that I agree with the reasoning, I agree with the timing. I think we're making progress on the municipal finance department in a lot of areas, and we should keep ourselves flexible, and like our responsibilities and our relation to town finance are flexible as well.
Okay, anything else? Ms. Mahan?
For the sake of, I don't want to get anyone mad at me right before Thanksgiving. A, I'm definitely open to having a conversation in the future. B, in terms of who the comptroller reports to, I would have to really be swayed by, to me, it's a big concession of the Board of Selectmen to give up oversight of that position. Speaking for myself personally, when I had an issue with the schools and the school budget and the Powers and Sullivan audit that they rewrote, which is saying it kindly, as well as I like to think myself and all of us, stay on top of what the comptroller does in terms of, I know it's not the town manager's duty, but if it was the town manager's duty, and I'm not saying Mr. Chapdelaine, if it was Ms. Doe, who was the town manager, and she oversaw the comptroller, and it would be under that town manager's discretion versus the oversight that we have right now, just to say, okay, we have a July 31st audit. The selectmen having oversight about that can inquire about that, and as well as certification of free cash. We have the right to do that. If we acquiesce and give up that oversight of the comptroller, if we have an issue in terms of whether it's a town or school, if there was a future rewrite of outside Powers and Sullivan audit, we don't have that recourse anymore. We'd have to go through the town manager, and I'm not saying this town manager, I'm saying Ms. Doe, as well as if I try to inquire and follow a status update on year-end audit, on free cash certification, I'd be at the mercy of Ms. Doe, town manager, when he or she felt it was appropriate, if ever. And if I did make such inquiries, I think we do have some fiduciary responsibility, and if we totally abdicate all that, I think we're giving away a large part. Having said that, I would be willing to do it if the original road, and I've had conversations with our current town manager about this, that we went down, which was from that school rewrite, Powers and Sullivan audit, where we went to DOR on the school rewrite audit, They came back with 3 phases of recommendations. In my personal opinion, on the town side, we've already agreed to, as well as agreed to a side agreement, memorandum, with the Board of Assessors, and kind of did that dotted line thing. If the treasurer and the town manager and the superintendent and school CFO said, you know what, we're all buying into what came out from Mass DOR, that we're going to set up that town school consolidation with the finance department, et cetera, I certainly, just myself personally, would be more amenable to doing that, because there were safeguards in there for any member of this current board or future board. My thing is, I don't want to be stonewalled, that I give away everything, so if myself or someone in the future occupying this chair, basically, you're shunted on the town side. So my thing was, like, if we can bring both town and school in, I'd be more open to, I'm definitely open to the conversation, I'd be more open to some sort of acquiescence, but more towards, as the town manager cited, I think with Lexington and Brookline, recommendation of a town manager for hiring and firing, final approval. That would be kind of the most. But we're not deciding that here tonight, but my thing is, to me, selectmen have an oversight of comptroller, and I know myself and all of us do our homework, and I've been, and I don't mean this as a slight or anything, but we're aware of the July 31st audit and free cash certification that came from this board and not from the town manager. Now, it's not his responsibility to tell us that, but if it was his responsibility and one of us tried to get that information individually, that would be a violation of the Town Manager Act. So that's where I'm trying to say to protect our fiduciary carrying out of our responsibility, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Let me just take this up a level, just, I think the discussion that we have to have is not even necessarily around structure, not even necessarily around reporting, but this is a great opportunity before we go out to the market to bring in a new comptroller, to talk about governance and talk about how we actually exercise our oversight. Maybe there is no structural change whatsoever, but maybe there are things that we should be doing. For example, I mean, we've worked with the Human Resources Director to try to, and the Town Council helped us immensely with this too, to scope out an approach to performance evaluation by this board and to try to formalize that. There might be other controls, such as, regular budget to actual reports, or what we want to see. How do we want to exercise that oversight, recognizing the limitations of a part-time board that is not working on a day-to-day basis. So I think those are the things I'd love for us to think about, and there's no decisions tonight, but I think that it's worth just putting that out there as we try to get temporary services, and then I would like us, I hope that the board will agree to utilize the town manager's assistance to vet candidates as we did the last time around as well, for professional pros. Mr. Green.
So I just feel this is so premature that we need to talk about how we're going to replace this controller. I have always favored a consolidated financial management. However, we need to focus first on the treasurer's position and get that taken care of this town meeting. So anyhow, I favor it, and I favor any way that Adam can help us, but I think the schedule that I've just read through there that is being recommended by Adam and with you, Mr. Chairman, that looks pretty solid to me. So, we got to get about that.
Okay.
Is all I'm saying.
Okay. So,
Is it appropriate for a citizen comment or not?
Ordinarily, I think on a matter like this, I probably would not be soliciting it. Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Chair, can I, just on one comment you made, I do think, and I talked about this in great depth with Sandy Pooler and Karen Malloy.
Yeah.
And I think we did come to agree that most people who work as municipal accountants right now, so, and not that we'd certainly consider people in the private sector too, but I do think we can run down a parallel path here, because I'm actually quite confident that someone that would take this job probably wouldn't give a great deal of consideration to whether or not they were appointing to the Board of Selectmen, reporting to the Board of Selectmen or manager. And if we kept candidates fully abreast of the discussion while they were considering, while they were applicants, I don't think we would do any harm to our candidate pool. And I think it keeps us on track of being able to recruit and hire somebody while also forwarding this discussion. So I think what I would ask for the board's consideration on, and we have time. I mean, Rich has given us very good notice through the first week of January. We are going to work on an interim proposal. We have time for the board to contemplate these things and then come back at the next meeting if we don't want to, if the board doesn't want to take a vote tonight. But what I would suggest is that we, given what I've heard the board say, we talk about moving forward with the recruitment process and then also allow me to come back working in coordination with the chair with a more thorough presentation on what some of the options might be for the position.
Yep.
More thorough report on how Lexington, Needham, Brookline, other communities do it, and then have, again, a more in-depth discussion specifically about that matter. Not at the next meeting, maybe that's later in January or something like that.
Deal? Everybody?
Okay, so we
I think
took
we
a
have no-
motion. Yeah,
We had the motion. Did we vote it? I think we voted.
I think we only voted.
You voted on the
We voted the
voted.
recruiting process.
So we need to.
I move
No,
that
interim.
we approve the recruitment process as recommended.
Second. Dan voted the interim.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, so I have two comments on the recruitment process. One, in the selection panel, do we want to permit the treasurer in particular to make a designee?
Yes, I think that's, that was just probably.
And since we're doing that for the treasurer, do we feel the need to do that for the town manager and/or the school department? What I'm getting at is that Michael Morris might be the right choice to represent the treasurer's office, and I defer to Dean to make that decision. Since we're explicitly making that, for him, is there anyone else on that list we should be trying to think about for that? Or do we want to say, no, it really is the school CFO, and it really is Adam?
No, I accept that as an amendment, or designee for those positions.
All of them,
Yeah,
or
I
just?
think all of them is fine.
All of them.
Okay. My second comment on it was related to,
Well, I would, sorry, with this caveat, that if Joe has a designee, it has to be a selectman,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
As a not a
Yeah.
citizen. I mean, nothing
Yeah.
wrong with citizens.
Exactly,
And you
exactly.
gotta have a selectman on.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
okay. My second comment was on process, is that the way this is written right now is that I think that you'd be compelled to come back with one name. And if you want there to be flexibility, that if there is a pool and you have two or three and you think it makes sense to bring back two or three, that you've got that option. Is that something, what do people think about that?
Can I piggyback on that?
Well, I'm welcome additional, but I'm also curious what people think about that specific
Similar to
one.
what we've done previously in town manager searches, one of the things I was going to request that didn't happen last time, and there's nothing wrong with that, that the 1, 2, 3 finalists that are being considered by whatever person or persons who ultimately will present to the board, if the Board of Selectmen could get the resumes or curriculum vitaes of those 1, 2, 3 finalists, along with recommendation from, I'm assuming it's the town manager and whoever else is up on that committee, could provide them to us. And my other request would be similar to what happened in the last comptroller selection process, if there are any I don't want to say exams, but I know previous comptroller candidates, because I think people remember when last time came in, I had a follow-up meeting with Karen Malloy and Andrew Flanagan. If there were any sort of each candidate last time was given sort of an exam, I don't want to say exam, I can't think of the best word. Assessment to complete. And when I met with them afterwards, I didn't ask for individual names. They said, the final 3 One completed in 20, 30 minutes, the other two couldn't complete. You know, one took it a year out, and I sat down with Andrew and Karen, and I got it done in under 5 minutes and did the year out. So my question would be, I would like to see if that same process, if there is an assessment. So what I would like to see is 1, 2, or 3 finalists. I wouldn't like to just get the one finalist. I'd like to see the curriculum vitae or resume of,
So up to 3 finalists.
yes. Or if for some reason you say there's only two finalists, as well as a copy of, not there, if there is a similar assessment done, I'd like to just see a copy of that assessment. And I don't need to see their answers, but, you know, if there's anything beyond that that I could get, so.
So, Mr. Chair, I recall us having this exact discussion when we were last searching for the comptroller. I'm absolutely fine with having the process allow for bringing up to 3 finalists before the board, but I'll give the same, I suppose, warning that I gave last time. It can get very sensitive with people if they think their current employer is going to find out they're going for a job by going public. And that's not, you know, while that is the norm for town management positions, it's not the across-the-board norm for municipal finance positions. So it could put candidates in a funny position. And I guess I would say I don't want to lose the best candidate because they don't want to take a risk of becoming public and not get chosen. So I guess I would ask for the board's flexibility within the process, you know, with the chair being part of this and his discretion on whether or not bringing back more is going to work. I mean, if everybody was willing to go public, I think that's a great thing. If we fear losing, you know, who the committee thinks is the best candidate because they don't want to be out there publicly, I would like a little bit of flexibility in that regard.
Okay.
Diane, are you okay with that? You want to see more than one person?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I mean, we oversee this position.
So you want
We
us
do
to
it with
bring
town
2
manager.
to 3 candidates back even?
What about the concerns about, you look at it, you think, you just don't think it's, are you worried that we'd lose candidates because of that? Or you're willing to take the risk because you want to see more than one, or how are you weighing that?
I mean, for comptroller, I don't see how we lose candidates. I mean, I understand the town, we went through this with the town manager search. To me, that's the penultimate position. And we got the 3 names of the 3 finalists.
Yep.
So I don't see, to me, and I don't mean to mean the comptroller position, but to me, the penultimate position that we oversee is the town manager, and I'd like the same process for comptroller. And I think Arlington, in my opinion, is a plum community. I think it's, I'd like to say #1 town in the state, but, you know, if you had to do top 3, it's definitely in the top 3, but, and I think professionals would, I think it plays both ways. I think professionals going for comptroller #1 wouldn't have a problem, their name being released as a finalist, so that the board that knows, as well as, I kind of think it's a feather in their hat, because I don't know where else you go for a town, and perhaps a lot of the cities. I think if somebody said, oh, Arlington's looking at our comptroller, I think they may, if it's somebody really important, they'll probably say, we don't want to lose you to Arlington, or we almost lost you to Arlington. So I don't see how that's a negative, and I'd like to follow the same process as we've done with the town manager. And if it's only 2 finalists, that's fine. I just don't want to go through the repeat of what we went through last time, that's all.
Well, I was chair last time. I thought it was an excellent process, but that's myself. Can I ask, through the chair, Mr. Heim, could these, I think I know the answer to this, could these interviews be conducted in executive session?
Not for the finalists, no.
Do you know differently or something?
He's saying if we do semifinalists, they could be done in executive session. So perhaps if we, as a.
Wait, sorry. So semifinalists can, but
Yes.
finalists
So,
can't?
I want to clarify something. It depends on how you're structuring the process. If you're forming a subcommittee to interview candidates,
Right.
there's a different way of approaching it, but that's not my understanding of what's being proposed here. The manager, correct me if I'm misreading the memo and the process as I understand it is being suggested. What's being suggested is essentially that a working group is going to interview a larger body of candidates and come up with designated representatives from a number of bodies, not as a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen. And that then those folks who are basically make the final cut are going to be presented. And I don't think that there's a means of whittling it down to finalists and then sort of final finalists. In other words, I don't think that there's going to be the ability to, if you're going to have 3 people that you want the board to choose from, I think that's going to have to be done in open session.
So, I just want to, it is a real concern for people to publicly interview for a job that they don't get. You know, it's one thing if they are interviewed and they get the job, but, so, you know, I can understand if we can't figure out a way to do this in executive session, or perhaps we put a second selectman on the selection committee, Diane, to deal with your concerns.
Mr. Dunn?
Yeah, I'm certainly fine with adding another selectman. I don't know if the town manager is, but I certainly would be. Diane, I totally agree. The town manager, making those interviews public and making those finalists public, I totally agree with that process too. And the thing about the town manager is that, you know, so much of the town manager's job is interfacing with the public and how they deal with the department heads and all that stuff. Like, so that to me is like, that public interview part is like a test of part of what they really are good at. The comptroller doesn't have the same public face. The comptroller has to be skilled, they have to be competent, they have to be have high integrity. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that they have to be good at, but I don't see that they're like, you know, their ability to interact with the public, you know, beyond being polite, as being an important test. So I agree with you. We hire these 2 positions, but I'm personally totally okay with having different processes, because I think they're different roles with different, you know, bailiwicks. So I don't want to, you know, we've served on the board for 7 years. You know, I'm a believer in giving discretion to the people making decisions. And so I want flexibility, and if this committee that we're creating wants to bring forward more people, I want to give them the freedom to do that, but I want to require it. So that's where I am.
Okay, and I'm lost pass at this, and I don't know if the town manager can help me out, and I'm really putting him on the spot. Because we've had conversations, and you know how the process went last time, and you know what my concerns were, and follow-up meetings, and the July 31st and free cash updates and all that, which I really do stay on top of and pay attention. So I don't know that you can give me an answer, and if you can't, that's fine, but kind of knowing, because I don't want to go in and rehash everything and be here for another hour, but if you feel you have a grasp of, you know, what my thoughts and positive motivations are, if there's anything that you would recommend, or maybe you would say, you know what, let's just not talk about it tonight and ruminate it, discuss it a little bit more and address it further down the line. Or, I don't know if it's appropriate because it messes up the makeup of the committee. If there could be a second selectman, that's, you know, I don't sign up for many committees, but that's something I'd definitely be interested in. So, first of all, is there anything you can aid me in moving this forward? Or do you want to say to me, let's talk about this, you know, let's get the process going and all that, and if the board decides to put a second selectman on, that's fine, or?
So let me, on the second part, if I could ask town council.
And I'm not saying there should be.
Adding a second selectman, make it a public body?
I think that there's a spectrum of how these types of things get considered, right? If you're creating what's tantamount to a subcommittee, then you've got to follow a sort of open meeting law process. If you're essentially saying, we're having the human resources director, and we've talked about this a lot, the sort of, you know, nuanced distinction between a working group and a committee or a subcommittee. I do think it pushes the line towards a sort of subcommittee and sort of a screening committee of the Board of Selectmen, as opposed to, you know, we're taking advantage of our human resource professional, the town manager. I just want to protect, you know, all of you guys. I don't have a stated preference myself, but I think that would push it towards being a screening committee rather than the manager, you know, the treasurer, and the human resources director, and the schools representative sort of.
What if the
If we
second
have a
selectman
second-
is ex officio?
But can I, by adding another selectman to that committee, which includes all those other people, it's not just a subcommittee of the Board of
You
Selectmen.
still outnumber us, yeah.
I guess I'm not really, I don't love the word committee, the way it's being used in the memo. I'm not trying to criticize anybody. I'm just saying that when I think of a screening committee, I'm thinking that it's really something that's an entity of the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
When I'm thinking of sort of a group of people who are already professional staff in the town, although I understand that the treasurer's, you know, an elected official, it's much more just like, hey, these are people from the town, they made a recommendation to you with working through the chair on somebody. If you want to adopt a process of having 2 selectmen on it, I guess what I would recommend we do is just say, okay, well, we've got a body, I'll take a closer look and maybe make sure that we can have a good understanding whether we should call this a preliminary screening committee or just a working group, and go from there.
Could I just clarify, Mr. Heim, in the memo, it's referred to as a selection panel.
Yeah, it's not referred to as a
Sorry,
committee.
my apologies.
Yeah.
My apologies.
It's referred to as a panel, which implies a group of individuals, but, yeah.
I think maybe we can, and from a different angle, make this easier. I think we can commit to coming back with multiple candidates.
Yeah.
But with the caveat that there's the chance that we could come back before you and say, and have an explanation as to why there aren't 2 candidates, but commit to, at the start of the process, saying that we'll bring at least 2 candidates before the board. Yeah. I mean, I'm totally comfortable recommending that and standing behind that.
And I would just note, just one aspect of the process that's proposed here is that before those candidates are brought forward to the board, just everybody recognize reference checks are being done. So that is a bit of a trigger that gets the word out that these folks are out in the market, but so be it, you know. Even if one were brought forward, I suppose there is no guarantee that we would approve them, so. Mr. Grilli.
Well, I just want to point out, the last time it was also that we could have brought multiple candidates before the board. But after the process, I mean, as Diane referenced herself, two of the 3 semifinalists were unable to complete the assessment process. So it was a decision of that group, including myself, of course, to bring the 1 candidate forward. But we could have brought more forward. So I'm more than glad if, I do think it's a real thing, but if the person really wants a job, then let them be willing to come sit in front of us and be interviewed.
All right, do we have a motion?
Well, there already was a motion.
I move that we approve the selection process, and now I feel we need to amend it to that we ask them to bring forward at least 2 candidates for a final interview by the Board of Selectmen.
And that we have
Does that work?
two selectmen
No, let's not do that.
representatives on the panel?
No, it sounds like too much complication.
Okay,
although
okay.
Yeah, let's not do
I
that.
want to make sure Diane's satisfied with this.
The multiple candidates?
Yeah, as long as there's an avenue that if for some reason we had a similar situation that the 2 or 3 town manager side people felt one way, whatever's the appropriate way for Mr. Curo to indicate he feels another way.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, last time I feel we went a lot on, I stayed back, we went a lot on,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, I just don't want to go
Okay.
into it anymore. I just don't want that again, that's all. I just want an avenue that,
Okay.
and it sounds like we have
I
it.
definitely take that under advisement,
Yeah.
too, so. Okay, we have a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And I
Thank
think the
you.
third piece of action we need is the job description itself, and there is a red-lined copy in the packet.
I move approval of the amended job description.
Second,
Moved by Mr. Dunn, second by Ms. Mahan. Is there any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay. Well, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you very much.
We will coordinate on getting that selection panel together, and we'll rock and roll.
Okay, next item, Mr. Grilly, report,
need
Town Night 2018.
I need about 45 minutes for this. Do anybody want a 5-minute break first? Or?
I want a 60-minute presentation. Yeah. It's only Monday Night Football, right? You know, see how ahead.
If you remember at the last discussion about Town Night, issues such as, there's so much to do for Town Day, it's grown exponentially or whatever, and we pointed out this year we raised about $20,000, and that's how much Town Night cost us before we even got to Town Day. So anyhow, the direction of this board was for me as the liaison to go back to the committee with our co-chairs and discuss with the committee what they felt, and it's unanimous. What the committee has voted to do, and I now inform the board, is the committee will not be running Town Night for 2018. That's all we've said at this point. I don't know that the rest of you, we haven't gotten any negative from anybody about doing away with Town Night, even after the front page article by the Advocate, and that, I know. And a good job, it's just, but I expected, letters the next week, and we just haven't heard a lot. But we do want to leave this caveat. If there is an organization, if there is an individual that would like to take that over, it's wide open. They're more than welcome to. But officially, as of this point, along that this board approves, we will not be sponsoring or in any way involved with the Town Night in 2018.
Second.
And put more efforts towards Town Day, hopefully. Marie, co-chair, anything I didn't say there properly?
So we're taking a motion to receive the report with the thanks of the board?
Yeah, I mean, the vote
Recommendation
was
for-
let the committee decide, and I'm just reporting what the decision was, so I guess it's a receipt.
Yep. I hear that motion is by Mr. Greeley, second by Ms. Mahan. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much, Mr. Greeley. Thank you very much, Ms. Kropelka, and the rest of the committee.
Indeed.
Okay, we now have correspondence received concerns regarding bike path at Water Street, David Woodford, 23 Water Street, and Town Hall front entrance, Barbara Docia, 45 Columbia Road. I do not
Move
see
receipt.
either. There's a motion to receive. Is there a second? And are there any
Second.
referrals? Okay. Could I suggest a referral of the first item to TAC and the second item to the town manager?
Yes.
Well, hearing
You get
no
to
objection-
oversee that?
Hearing no objections? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, it is unanimous. Now I have new business. Ms. Kropelka.
Nothing except happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
No new business. I share all of your many thanks for a wonderful community to work in and a wonderful set of volunteers, officials, and employees who try to work to serve these residents.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mr. Chaplain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one piece of new business. I did let the board know this via email today, and we'll be putting out some further information to the public coming up. But under the Community Choice Aggregation Plan that we've been in since August, when Eversource resets its prices on January 1st, their prices are going up significantly compared to the Community Choice Aggregation pricing. So the Arlington Green 5%, the default price, will now be nearly 2.5 cents less per kilowatt hour than what the Eversource rate will be from January 1st through June 30th. So that means the average user will save about $15 a month for that 6-month period. And amazingly, even the 100% renewable option, where if you opted up to 100%, will still be cheaper than the Eversource basic rate, which has 12% renewable energy. So it's not the whole story on it. There's still more time to go to see if the program is an overall success. But we came in under Eversource's rate, and now we're going to be way under Eversource's rate for the second 6-month period. So I think it's a testament to the, what will hopefully play out to be a very good choice for the town.
Every 6 months?
Every 6 months. Excellent. Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much for all your work on that. Mr. Greeley.
But it's every 18 months, the aggregation, right?
Aggregation was 28 months.
28 months, no new business.
Ms. Mahan.
Just one, and there's a particular file in the back of my mind. I remember seeing a copy that the members of the board received when we get the call answer request online inquiries. And I can't remember if it was directed to the town manager or Department of Public Works. I know it was CC to the board and Mrs. Kropalka had sent it to us. It was from a woman who lives up in the Heights, who was asking for some relief on the Park Ave situation when you come from Downing Square. Am I ringing a bell with you, Mrs.?
Not the woman she'll be before the board once we hear from Corey, from Florence Ave down to the Park Ave.
I thought it was from Downing Square up to Mass Ave. Well, maybe it's the same thing. Okay, you know what? I'm going to say no new business. I'm going to follow up with Mrs. Kropalka, Mr. Chapdelaine, to see, because it's just I remember reading that, and I don't remember hearing any follow-up, so maybe that's, is that who she was from? Oh, I thought she,
Not Park
okay.
Ave, from
All right,
Florence
so we'll
Ave.
discuss, no other new business. I'll call both of you all in the morning. Thank you.
Mr. Dunn.
Sorry.
Nothing.
No, I don't remember it.
Mr. Byrne.
So I do have some new business to share with everyone tonight. And that is that our next meeting, December 4th, 2017, will be my last as a member of the Board of Selectmen. There's only so much time in the day, and, due to some changes at work and, of course, getting married, I think it's time for me to, spend some more time, on those endeavors. I will have a long list of people to thank, and, I will certainly talk about how much I enjoy my time here on the meeting on the 4th, but I thought it was important to let people know now. Know that I loved being on this board. It's an honor of a life to serve a community in this capacity. I've enjoyed working with all of my colleagues on the board, of course, town staff, Adam, Doug, and of course, the Selectmen's office, Marie. So I'll still be around for a couple more weeks, and I'm sure we'll have, plenty of more time to have this discussion then. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. I think we have to add that to our list of thanks, your service with us, and we are certainly going to make sure to observe that more fittingly and at an earlier hour.
Oh, jeez.
Of the night, although I can say that I'll miss you to see we came on together. Mr. Byrne did give the courtesy of notifying me that this announcement was coming. So it is my intention at our next meeting to place upon the agenda a proposed process by which we will fill your vacancy. We'll place that at the end of the agenda so that you don't have to sit through it. A proposed process for adoption by the board. The town council has advised me that after December 4th, there's a 30-day clock that ticks under the Town Manager Act. We must appoint a successor. It would be the four remaining members of the board plus the town moderator participate in that vote to appoint a successor. So on the December 4th, I will place an agenda item for us to discuss a process by which we will recruit, vet, and rank any potential applicants to fill out the term. It's only to fill out the term, so at that point, we're talking 3.5 months. With an intention of being in a position to make that appointment at our December 18th meeting, which is our last meeting before the expiration of that 30-day period. Stay tuned, and I'm sure everybody's phones will be ringing off the hook now. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Although, my understanding is that I'm a select tone for life, so.
And we will see you on November 30th at the tree lighting, and we will see you at the...
Yes, you are.
Select tone, once a select tone, always a select tone. And on that note, no pun intended, I'll entertain a motion to, oh no, we have an executive session.
Yes.
Oh, goodness, I won't, are we going to have to take a public vote when we come out of this?
No.
Are we likely to have to take a public vote?
Probably not. We'll see. You don't have to necessarily take a public vote tonight. It depends on what the outcome of the executive session is. So the purpose of tonight's executive session is to comply with the open meeting law. The open meeting law requires you to review executive session minutes and determine whether or not they should be released or not. You can take a vote in executive session to determine whether or not you're going to do that. And then, in theory, you'd come and take a vote at some point out of executive session if you've decided to release them. So you may come back out of executive session tonight to make that vote, you may not. It depends on your consideration of that issue.
I'm anticipating that this is probably a quick session, so I will take a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of compliance.
Is it possible for us to just say, I imagine the issue is whether there's going to be changes to the minutes?
No, Mr. Greeley.
Possible changes?
The issue is whether or not you feel like the minutes can be released because they've served their purpose or not. So I don't want to speak for the board on that score. The board could decide that they still think the minutes need to be kept confidential, or the board could decide we're satisfied that we don't need to keep this confidential anymore.
Where you were going, Joe.
Yeah,
sorry.
I think we
Sorry.
can probably do this
Quickly,
quickly. So I will entertain a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of compliance with the open meeting law for review of executive session minutes of October 16th, 2017.
So
When
moved.
we come out, the purpose is to take a vote and adjourn?
We
or
will
purpose-
take a vote. We will be taking a vote.
But the purpose is to
I anticipate
come
we will
out,
take a vote.
and then
we will
adjourn.
adjourn. Okay.
Second by Mr. Gurley for a roll call.
Okay, for a roll call.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, the board is now in executive session. Thank you very much.
Move to adjourn?
Second?
Motion by Mr. Guerrero, second by Mrs. Mahan. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The next meeting of the Board of Selectmen will be December 4th, 2017. Good night, Arlington.